Broadcasting.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Peace Corps Connect to the Future. I'm Stephen Saum, Director of Strategic Communications at National Peace Corps Association. And while you're joining us here on our summit, we have a special musical guest. While folks are coming in and joining us, it's my pleasure to introduce Katie Long.
All right. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great day, and thank you so much for joining. Let's see here. All right. Is everything good? Yeah. Like Stephen said, I'm Katie Long. I'm a board member with the National Peace Corps Association. I'm the representative to volunteers who served in the Americas. I served in Honduras from 2005 to 7, and then in Panama for Peace Corps response to 2015 to 16. And we thought as people were signing on and getting settled and excited for the summit, we'd start off with some music. So here are some songs inspired by Peace Corps. And this first one you may have heard before, it was written for the 55th anniversary, and it's about just some of the things that I and many of us learned in Peace Corps. So here we go. I know a lot about planting trees. I know some about keeping bees. I can write a health center strategic plan. I can build a school out of recycled cans. But even more than that, I know how to be a valued member of a community, and I learned it in the Peace Corps. I can go more than 2 years without a date. I can talk about the weather for 5 hours straight. I know how to be frustrated and still laugh. I know how to take a bucket bath. But even more than that, I know how to relate that it is our differences which make us so great, and I learned it in the Peace Corps. Well, if you want to know how to ride a motorcycle, don't ask me. But if you want to learn a way to make beans for dinner, I can teach you 53. I know how to give myself a haircut, the best way to crack a coconut. With a machete, I can clear some land. I can catch a mosquito with just one hand. And there are other things I'd love to tell, but you know some things just don't translate that well. And I learned that in the Peace Corps. All right. So this next song is inspired. I wrote it actually here in Baltimore during a stay-at-home order, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Peace Corps, and it's all about like staying connected even as we're at a distance, and it's entitled At a Social Distance, and I sing it with apologies to the great Bette Midler. From a distance, we all can still hang out as long as we download Zoom. From a distance, we can do a virtual workout and have happy hour in our rooms. From a distance, we all can learn to bake and do things that relax us. We'll take time to clean. We'll take time to sing. We'll take time to do anything but taxes. From a distance, we all can clean our drawers and find we had 9 things of Old Bay, especially here in Baltimore. From a distance, the kids can still do school and chores and put on a one-woman show, spring play. From a distance, we can learn instruments and form a FaceTime band, playing songs of of hope, playing songs of peace. They're the songs of a physically distanced land. And we will still stay in touch. We are still sending hugs, 'cause we're all still us from a distance. All right. And so moving on, this next song was for last year's Peace Corps Connect conference in Austin. So if anyone was there, or if you guys were there, you would have heard it already. And it's about, the theme of the conference was innovation, and it's about managing expectations and adapting and kind of making the best of tough situations like in and out of Peace Corps. So here we go. You hope that you would learn some Spanish, but you learned Quechua instead. They said that you'd be teaching English, but you ended up teaching sex ed. No, you don't always get the site you want. You don't always get the counterpart you want. You might think you know what you want, and if you give it some time, you might find you get what you need. Now back in the States post-Peace Corps, when things don't always go your way, like when WebEx doesn't work, or there's a global pandemic and everyone's buying all the toilet paper for some reason, or there's any breaking news, or the Zoom slide isn't the one you asked for. You just adapt a little, hope things will be okay. Virtual work meetings aren't always what you want. Hulu Plus doesn't always have the selection that you want. Life isn't always what you want. And because of your Peace Corps times, you often find you get what you need. All right. And those of you that are wondering if you're in the right place, you are. This is Peace Corps Summit Into the Future, so welcome. And this is the last song, and it's written is specifically for this summit, and it's kind of about looking ahead, just like into the future, right? During unprecedented times with so many challenges, how we can come together as RPCVs and hopefully work to help to build a better future. So here we go. And I have to remember how this tune goes. It's not my tune if you're noticing a theme. So let's see. I don't mind sheltering in place in my house. I'll just read in my hammock till it's late. And I don't mind being stuck with the same people all the time. In my village, there were only 8. 'Cause somewhere in between bouts of culture shock, we all learn to be flexible and think outside the box. We wish today's problems were easy, but they're not. As volunteers, we persevere as we unite. I don't mind working remotely. I've definitely been more remote. And I don't mind if my email server is down for an hour. I used to get my mail from a boat. And while it by the day, and we don't know when we'll get back to normal, they say. Well, us RPCVs never did things normal anyway. As volunteers we persevere as we unite. As volunteers we persevere as we unite. All right, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure, and I'm so excited to be together right now for this summit. So, thanks.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Katie, for your wonderful music. What a great way to start Peace Corps Connect to the Future. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Glenn Blumhorst. I'm president of National Peace Corps Association, and I was a volunteer in Guatemala from 1988 to 91. And I've chosen today to represent my bio. What we're doing is a 6-word bio for myself today, and it is serving you, the Peace Corps community. And I chose that 6-word bio because really that's what this role here is all about for me at Peace Corps. We are about serving the community as an organization, and I have the honor and the privilege of being your servant as well and serving you as a member of this community. So I'm so very grateful for that opportunity. Very pleased to welcome all of you to Peace Corps Connect to the Future, an idea summit we're calling it. This is our first and hopefully our last virtual summit. This was a lot of hard work, and I just want to thank all the board directors, the members of our staff, volunteers, and family and friends and others who really contributed to making this all possible. It's a lot of work compared to an actual physical gathering, and it's quite a different type of work that we had to undertake to make this happen. Today, we would have been normally celebrating and festivating, I guess is the word, at our annual national conference in Seattle. Today would have been Peace Corps Connect in Seattle. But as many of us know, things sometimes change. And this year what happened on March 15, 2020, we heard the Peace Corps announce that they were making the unprecedented decision to suspend all volunteer programs and activities due to the COVID. And 7,300 or more Peace Corps volunteers were brought home and programs were suspended at that time. Lives were really turned down by the COVID pandemic, and that was just the beginning. We responded to the return of the Peace Corps volunteers by launching a global reentry program. You'll hear a little bit more about that later this afternoon, but it was intended to throw out the welcome mat to those 7,000 evacuated Peace Corps volunteers and give them a long virtual embrace and welcoming them home from their service in what was much a traumatic and abrupted situation for them, many of them who were not expecting to be where they are today after that transition. So we also mobilized to help advocate for benefits to be enhanced for the evacuated Peace Corps volunteers and work to support them as an organization with their jobs and academics and finding opportunities, connecting with the community after their return. But we also were concerned about the future of the Peace Corps. We found it in an unprecedented state, an uncertainty in our country, but also an uncertainty with the Peace Corps and its future with no volunteers serving overseas. We ramped up our advocacy efforts on behalf of the Peace Corps just to ensure that it secured its additional funding for the evacuation and that the process of advocating for future year funding was also in place to ensure that there was going to be continuity for Peace Corps' funding. But ultimately we had to decide to cancel Peace Corps Connect. And when we did, we were looking at really grim situation here in the United States in terms of the pandemic, where the death toll had reached over 100,000 from COVID-19 and more than 40 million individuals had filed for unemployment since mid-March. Many of them and most of them actually in communities of people of color. And then on May 25th, we witnessed the killing of George Floyd, an unarmed Black man at the hands of a white police officer. And his last words that we all heard, "I can't breathe." This sparked nationwide protests and the beginning of a reckoning with systemic racism. And I know personally, this struck me very deeply. A few days after that, and just watching the news and absorbing what was happening, it really struck me that National Peace Corps Association as an organization needed to come out clear and articulate in what our position was and what our reaction was to this situation. And we took a stand against racial injustice. We issued a May 31st statement that one of the things it said was we condemn the actions that led to George Floyd's death, just as we condemn discrimination and violence against all Black people, and that includes members of the Peace Corps community. Since then, a nationwide movement has opened our eyes and opened our hearts and minds. It's also sparked community-wide conversation on racism right here in our own Peace Corps community. And so July 18, 2020, here we are now, after all of this. On what would have normally been a festive occasion for Peace Corps Connect up in Seattle, we're here virtually gathered with all of you. And this event we decided to hold because we really felt that we needed to hear the collective voice of our community and on the issues that are most important to you. First and foremost, that of systemic racism and how we are going to deal with it in our own community and our own institutions, including National Peace Corps Association. We heard from you also about concern about the Peace Corps and its future as well, and when volunteers may someday, hopefully soon, be able to return back to their service, or new volunteers will be able to be recruited and placed in their countries of service, just like we were. So we held a number of town halls throughout the last 2 weeks, 8 of them in total. And those town halls hosted conversations on a variety of different topics. And these topics then feed into this annual summit, and you're going to hear the report outs from those town halls, and you're going to hear the most salient issues that were identified, and even some really great ideas that came out of those. But I want to say that while we've reached the summit here after 8 town halls, this is only the first step of many in a very long journey. We have much more work to do. Beyond this summit, we have to now put words into action, ideas into action. It's not going to be downhill from the summit. It's not going to be downhill from here. We have hard work to do, and we have commitment to show. We first, of course, want to ensure the future of the Peace Corps. We want to ensure that it not just survives, but that it emerges transformed, recreated, as many people have said, dramatically changed. It needs to be a new Peace Corps. I think we have all come to that understanding. We're going to hear a little bit later from the Peace Corps director herself, and she's going to share with her some of her thoughts about where Peace Corps is headed as it reemerges from this crisis situation. But also, we want to achieve that vision that we have of a united and vibrant Peace Corps community. And that's our vision statement. But you know what? We need to include in our own vision statement that this is a committee that needs to be one that is diverse, inclusive, and welcoming. And that is a powerful force for the change that we want to see. That, my friends, is our utmost priority going forward. And you have my commitment that I will do all I can and work hard for you and with you to make sure that happens. So while this weekend we would have had a nice festive gathering up in Seattle, and we would have enjoyed connecting with each other and hugging in real hugs and catching up on telling stories to each other, enjoying the Seattle weather and all the fun up there. It really is an entirely different weekend than what we had anticipated just a few months ago. But there's reason also today to have pause. Today, we're marking today is Nelson Mandela International Day. We must remember that in all that we're facing right now, he represents our North Star toward justice. So we're pleased to have our conference on his day and remember him and all that he stood for and follow his commitment and his example. Sadly, though, yesterday marked the 6th anniversary of the killing of Eric Gardner. That remains such a reality in our minds. Guess what? His dying words as well, 6 years ago, "I can't breathe," repeated 11 times, though it helped spark a movement in protest of police treatment of minorities. 6 years later, that happened again, and those words echoed in the last minutes of George Floyd's life. It's a moment of sadness for Eric, for George, and so many other Black Americans who have endured this violence for hundreds of years as a result of systemic racism. And just last night, as we were making the final preparations for this event, we learned of Congressman John Lewis's passing. He was an icon of the justice movement. Martin Luther spoke about the nation's bend toward justice. And that complicated bend was personified by Congressman John Lewis as a radical fighter, public servant, and friend. He was, of course, a wonderful supporter to all of the Peace Corps. And that came as no surprise because in 1968, he married Lillian Miles, who would become his wife of nearly half a century. She was a Peace Corps volunteer serving for 2 years in Nigeria and passed away just a few years ago. So in these most challenging times, and at this time of John Lewis's death, in these challenging times for our nation, we have lost an icon in the struggle for racial justice in America. I'd like to then take a moment and give a few moments of silence in reflection and remembering, mourning, and hope as we reflect on all of these events that have struck our community and mean so much to us. If you'll join me, please, in just a moment of silence. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It really, truly, and honestly is my hope, and it is my prayer that this gathering today will be a moment of remembering, one of reckoning, and that it will be the beginning of a new path forward toward justice and peace that starts right here with me and starts right here in our community. Thank you so much. I know that the director of the Peace Corps, Jody Olson, was also a good friend of Congressman Lewis, and I'm sure she's going to share maybe a few thoughts in terms of her relationship over the years in the Peace Corps with Congressman Lewis. But I just want to say today, it's just such an honor and a privilege to have Director Olson with us. I know she has a busy schedule, she has a lot going on, and she's very busy trying to get volunteers back into the field as soon as possible, and as soon as the conditions permit. But she's been really in tune with the community, I would say, attentive to the needs and expectations of the return to Peace Corps volunteers who were evacuated. And she has certainly paid attention to what's going on in our community and in our country. So it's really a pleasure for me to introduce her today. She's going to share a few words with us. The 20th Director of the Peace Corps, Jody Olson, who was sworn in March 2018, started her service with the Peace Corps Committee as a Peace Corps volunteer in Tunisia in 1966 to 68. She has held multiple leadership positions at the Peace Corps, including headquarters and in the field. She was once the acting director of the Peace Corps. She's been the deputy director. She has been a chief of staff. She has been a regional director, and she has been a country director in Togo. But let me say, those are certainly strong credentials for somebody to be the current Peace Corps director. But I know Jody personally, and I know her very well, and her values and her commitments. And I have to say, there's no better person for the job right now than Jody Olson. I know that Jody cares deeply about the Peace Corps itself and about Peace Corps volunteers. And when it came to make the evacuation or the decision to evacuate the volunteers and evacuate the volunteers, I trusted Jody. I knew that she was doing what she felt was in the best interest of the agency and the Peace Corps volunteers themselves. They all arrived home safe and sound, and their lives interrupted back home weren't the same, but she handled that situation like no one of us would have wanted to have had to do. I'm so grateful for having her at the helm of the Peace Corps itself, and I'm very grateful for her 2 decades of service to the Peace Corps community. So I'm proud and honored and privileged to introduce my colleague and friend and our esteemed Director of the Peace Corps, Dr. Josephine Jody Olson.
It's a real pleasure to be here, even virtually. Thank you all so much. A special thank you to Glenn, a longtime friend, colleague, and a person I admire, as well as everyone at the National Peace Corps Association. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all your support, everything that you do. I also want to note at this moment, as we just took a moment of silence, that many years ago, I was lucky enough to hear Nelson Mandela speak and even shake his hand. I didn't want to do anything with my hand for quite a while afterward. I was so proud of that moment. But what I remember from that moment was his entire speech was about hope, was about the future, and about what can be accomplished. He never appeared angry. He always appeared strong and hopeful that entire evening. And knowing his background, I carried that, and I have tried to carry that with me ever since. When I was in college, I happened to be standing on Constitution Avenue as people moved forward for the March on Washington in August 1963, which included Congressman Lewis, very young at that time. That march, that afternoon, so affected me. And as if I've had the pleasure of reading and seeing and hearing and understanding Congressman Lewis's journey, his leadership that he has given this country, I too feel very sad at this moment and want to make sure that I honor a national icon, a national leader for all of us. I want to begin, first, I do want to thank Katie Long. That was so wonderful what you sang. And I might just say, Katie, that you probably said better than I'm going to say a lot of what I'm feeling right at the moment. And I'm hoping that the future and the excitement you had, that reference to the future that you, Glenn, also had, that I can continue to carry that with me as I speak for a few minutes this afternoon. I want to thank NPCA, the board, the staff, and members for all you do to support the Peace Corps mission and goals, and the incredible support you give Peace Corps and your fellow RPCVs during this very challenging time. You note, as you see, the title is Peace Corps Today. Now there's a reason for this title. I want to say Peace Corps Future, Peace Corps Going Forward, because this is about the future. And I'm going to be talking about our plans for returning to our global presence. But I have to refer to them as our global future plans exist today, Saturday, July 18th. Why do I give a date for this? Even as we're largely in charge of our process for returning, we're not in charge of the virus. It dictates the time, it dictates the place, and in this global pandemic, our time, its place changes every day. So when you listen, we're hoping this is what we can be over this coming year. But this is as of Saturday, July 18th. To the recently evacuated return volunteers who may be here today, and I know that several of you are, I am here for you. We're here for you. As I have talked with many of you, I know that I can't fully appreciate what you have been going through in having to leave your communities with almost no notice to a return that you hadn't planned. As I have said before, that fateful day, March 15th, just 4.5 months ago, that decision to evacuate all volunteers was the most difficult decision I have ever made in my life. And I think you can understand in that I have been part of Peace Corps. Peace Corps has been part of me for now over 54 years. I'm grateful for your service, and we are grateful to NPCA and all the affiliate groups and all of our partners in service who have stepped up and supported and continue to support our returned Peace Corps volunteers. The Peace Corps mission is still as relevant today as it was 59 years ago. The idea of Peace Corps, that idea, the volunteers could serve in their country for the cause of peace by living and working in other countries, struck a chord with thousands in the early 60s. And I confess, myself included, 1964 was when I first heard about Peace Corps. And that enthusiasm continues today. We must work together to ensure that the mission continues into the future, that volunteers return to the field when safely possible. While the mission remains relevant today, the world has changed. We've already been talking about that. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only highlighted racial and social economic inequities in our countries, but in countries abroad as well, including all current Peace Corps countries of service. The pandemic has also highlighted global interconnectedness, and with it, an increased need for people who can effectively and sensitively navigate cross-cultural difference to build just and equitable systems and sustainable peace. This need speaks directly to our continued relevance and why we must return to our countries of service as soon as it is safe to do so. We take this few months of pause in our in-field service as an opportunity to build into our plans a strong, self-aware, and equitable environment for all staff and volunteers. Peace Corps' focused goal, which is fully supported by Congress, let me say that again, which is fully supported by Congress, is to return to a full global presence as soon as we possibly can. Much uncertainty remains here at home and abroad about when and where we will be able to begin reestablishing our operations overseas. Still a question. I repeat, we don't control the disease or its course, but we do control our process to getting overseas. We have some of the brightest and most committed people on our team working hard to plan for a re-entry to the field that is strong and sustainable while assuring the well-being of volunteers, staff, and communities. We have developed a comprehensive two-part process whereby posts work alongside offices at Peace Corps headquarters to plan for a re-entry and to prepare to receive volunteers. Our host country staff are in place in our 61 countries with critical responsibilities towards our return. Our return begins with an external review process, which assesses a wide range of external factors, both domestic and international, including medical, security, administrative, and logistical criteria that must be just right for us to consider a re-entry to a specific country. When a country meets these external review criteria, Peace Corps notifies Congress, an important step, that we are initiating a planning for re-entry process, and this triggers the internal review. Our internal review is an exhaustive process by which a post prepares for every part of supporting Peace Corps volunteers, staff, and communities. It involves everything from our host families to our counterparts, to transportation in country, to precautions in the workplace, and to know how to treat a COVID case if it should arise. There are a multitude of checks and balances in this system because we cannot risk anyone. The Office of Safety and Security, Health Services, Global Operations, and Regions will each thoroughly review and approve each post's individual plans. The Peace Corps is already working in close partnership with our host country governments, local communities, and in-country stakeholders to ensure that the timing of our return is safe and according to each country's local conditions and requirements. And no two countries are similar. Multiple mitigation measures will assure that we're respectful of our host country's management of the pandemic, including testing for all volunteers prior to departure and a 14-day mandatory quarantine once they arrive. All posts will have an emergency response plan with detailed guidance on responding to any COVID-19 emergencies that arise. Posts are very eager to welcome volunteers again for service. We hear this every day. And they are fully engaged in this detailed planning process. We will provide reorientation and training on how to operate in a different environment. And there will be more training and preparation for volunteers and for staff to manage the different challenges of service during COVID-19. Until the pandemic is fully under control, we must operate in a different manner than we have before. And Glenn alluded to that earlier. And the challenges of volunteer service are going to differ. This is about assuring our host governments that we are keeping volunteers and their host families, counterparts, and communities healthy and safe. As you can guess, a lot of uncertainty remains. We face returning to countries where life, public education, health, agriculture, and food processing, distribution, and other systems and people have been impacted by COVID-19. In addition, and most importantly, people all over the world have been observing and even participating in racial justice and equity protests, particularly those in the United States. We are navigating a world that is in transition. Simultaneously, each of us as individuals, and so much within myself, we're transitioning in our own personal connection to the issues of race, social justice, and inequality. Given this time to focus and to grow, we will return to our post with renewed eyes, renewed clarity of what to serve means, and renewed expectations of ourselves. The agency is responding. We are responding. We're taking steps. We're building into and making central to our return to operations a workforce that is representative of the diversity of America by uncovering and removing barriers to equal opportunity for multiple groups, including Black invitees, volunteers, and employees. These efforts to date have included, but are not limited to, intentional holding of very difficult dialogues throughout the agency globally. Dialogues that are continuing almost daily today and will continue going forward. We have projects that reduce work and service barriers for both staff and volunteers. We're assessing and strengthening diversity recruitment and strengthening diversity pipelines through new and expanded partnerships, many of which are already coming forward and with which we're already engaged. A new agency-wide task force on diversity and inclusion in the agency will track our internal progress toward equity and diversity as we return to service. Enhancing communication about non-competitive eligibility in the federal government as an opportunity to leverage U.S. government efforts to increase diversity across all federal agencies. Our task force on diversity and inclusion has been charged with leveraging the agency data and all recommendations received to date from the field, from staff, and I know from many of you as RPCVs, so that we craft and subsequently implement concrete and meaningful strategies for change. As we face this uncertain world, one thing that is not uncertain is our relevance today. The Peace Corps mission of world peace and friendship has never been more important, and Peace Corps has never been more relevant than it is today. How? This begins with how we partner with our countries where we serve and how we earn their trust in returning to service safely. Safely for our volunteers, safely for our staff, and safely for the host country residents and our host country counterparts. As we move towards our 60th anniversary, which begins in October, and navigate these uncertainties, we also pause to celebrate all our volunteers who have contributed over these past 59 years, and to celebrate the new opportunities in service that lie ahead for all of us. Just this last week, we signed the implementing agreement between the Peace Corps and the Ministry of Education and Training of Vietnam to officially establish the Peace Corps program in English education in Vietnam. This has been many years in the making and a joyful moment for so many people. This historic moment, which also coincided with the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the United States of America and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Vietnam will be our 143rd country to host Peace Corps volunteers since the agency was founded. And as I was in Vietnam in December, I appreciated their excitement. And in fact, it was 3 of the English teachers that I was spending time with when I talked about volunteers living with host families. 3 of the teachers raised their hands and said, "Can I be a host mom? Can I be a host mom?" And I thought, whichever country, wherever we are, wherever we're going to be, can I be a host mom? That's what friendship is. That's what families are. The next step in partnership and in cross-cultural exchange and capacity building, this next step will benefit the people of both countries for generations and further demonstrate our relevance today. We are a global organization that can have a significant impact on global challenges. Addressing these global challenges starts with maintaining our focus on getting volunteers back into the field. That is who we are. However, as I've noted, we're not going back to the field the same as we were before. We're going to go back better. For 59.5 years, Peace Corps sought assurances from countries where we serve that our volunteers will be safe. We must now be prepared to assure these same countries that we have taken the steps necessary for everyone to be safe. More than ever before, we and our country counterparts, we and our country leaders in each of our countries are true partners. Returning better also relies on implementing the improvements that I have highlighted with respect to how we recruit, train, and support the volunteers that represent us. Peace Corps volunteers should represent the best of all of us in all our diversity that best represents us as Americans. Going back and how we go back is so important. Not just to the countries where we serve, but it is important to the entire world, because the entire world is watching us. They're waiting. They want to see. We're going back. As we go back, we will be humble We will be humble. We will be better, and we will be stronger for what we have been through together. The Peace Corps mission of world peace and friendship is as relevant today as it was in 1961, as I said before. We must work together to ensure that the mission continues into the future, that volunteers return to the field when safely possible, and that we take this pause in the field service as an opportunity to build into our plans a stronger and more equitable environment for all staff and volunteers. So what is our call to action? What is it for all of us? For me, the agency, our countries, our post-return volunteers, what is it? Our continued relevance and ability to carry our mission only holds true as long as we are able to continually grow and challenge ourselves to set the standard for community development. Challenge, our action, our continued relevance requires that we become increasingly diverse and inclusive. But our work doesn't stop there. A diverse and inclusive community requires nurturing, learning, and requires us to face challenges by participation in these very difficult dialogues. That we must evolve our models of service, our training and support to meet these challenges. Ultimately, the people we serve in more than 61 countries abroad deserve and expect nothing less. There are no easy answers. Boy, I can say there are no easy answers. And the process will be neither quick nor simple. But I truly believe that our returned Peace Corps volunteer community, our incredible staff, and the Peace Corps family, we are all up to this challenge. We are staying strong, and we stay a leader in our mission of world peace and friendship. I'm here for you all. I'm here for Peace Corps. I'm here for the mission. I am here for going back, better, stronger, more diverse, more equitable, so we can be proud for our next 60 years as we begin our 60th year. Thank you all. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your help. And thank you for being strong. I'll turn it back to Glenn.
Jody, thank you so very much for your message. We're just so grateful to have you with us today, and congratulations on Vietnam. That's great news. We're so glad to hear that. And really looking forward to seeing volunteers not only go there, but return to countries of service. So we'll make it 143 to go and going. We're just so grateful for your leadership. Thank you again for your great job at the helm of the Peace Corps Agency. So as we turn our attention to the rest of the program, I just want to give a quick overview of what to expect next. We have a busy agenda for today. We're starting here in a moment with some host country perspectives on the Peace Corps, brought to us from Guatemala, Kenya, and Nepal. We'll be hearing from our Global Citizen Award winners to speak from that perspective. Then we're going to report out on the 8 town hall meetings that were held during the last 2 weeks. Any ideas and insights that came from those town hall meetings. And then I'm really looking forward to this one. At 5 o'clock, I get to sit in on this panel discussion among several evacuated Peace Corps volunteers and another returned Peace Corps volunteer from earlier years in the Peace Corps. And we're just going to talk about reimagining a Peace Corps for the future. Finally, then, we do have a special guest coming before our final speaker, who will be Mari Carmen. We will be hopefully hearing from someone who has arranged to be with us this day for a short visit. But wrapping it up at the end of the day will be Mari Carmen Smith-Martinez, the chair of the board of National Peace Corps Association, reflecting on where do we go from here. So as I said, you can see we have a pretty busy day today, so we're going to try to keep it moving. I do want to remind everyone that we are live streaming on Facebook. And so if you want to move to that channel, you're certainly welcome to, or let others know that we're there as well. And also to mention that we do have a Q&A function on the Zoom webinar. and you should be able to find that at the bottom of your screen. It's a little bit different than the chat function that you might have used in the town halls. And our panelists will try to provide written answers back to those, as many as possible during the course of our conversations this afternoon. We will be responding to as many of the questions on behalf of Peace Corps as possible, and want to thank you for your interaction with us. We don't have live questions though from attendees other than in the chat. Also, just wanted to mention that you will be asked to complete a short survey at the end of the webinar. So you're welcome to pose any questions or comments there that you'd like to share. Your voice is the most important part of this mission and of our mission and this conference. So please do take advantage of the opportunity to complete the survey at the end. And we're going to be introducing throughout the conference here today some very short snippets of videos that we're calling Unfinished Business. They're evacuated Peace Corps volunteers speaking about the work that they have yet to do in their communities. So we'll be hearing from those in a moment, and I want to just say that if you need to take a bathroom break or grab another bottle of wine, that might be a good time to do it, because we'll put those videos off in the chat bar as well, and you can find them on our website if you don't have a chance to see them today. So with that, I'm going to hand the podium here back over to my colleague, Stephen. I believe he's there. We've had a little bit of technical difficulty here on the backside. If he's not, we'll just move on to the next part.
I'm here, Glenn. Thank you.
Go right ahead, Stephen.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. When the thousands of volunteers from around the world were evacuated, we asked many of them, what did you leave behind as Peace Corps volunteers, and what's your unfinished business? And dozens of them have participated. You'll be seeing many of them in the next edition of Worldview magazine, but we also have some of the videos that we'll be sharing with you today. And again, these are on our website, so if you need to step away, you're not going to miss them completely. But first up is Charlie Castillo, who is in Namibia.
Classes to deaf students in northern Namibia. When we were evacuated, I left my students, my coworkers, and all the Namibian friends I made. The unfinished business I'd like you to know about is that if I'm able to be reinstated as a PCV in my original site, then I will most likely go back. Otherwise, I would like to go back to Namibia as a grad student doing research on cross-cultural perceptions of and education of deaf people in the United States versus Namibia. I hope that Peace Corps continues to send PCVs who are deaf and hard of hearing or have ties to the deaf and hard of hearing community to countries where there are significant deaf and hard of hearing populations. And in serving these deaf and hard of hearing communities abroad, I would like to see an emphasis on strengthening local sign languages, as well as improving literacy. I would also like for PCVs to help empower deaf and hard of hearing people, to let them know that they are just as capable as hearing people in achieving their dreams, and to not let anything hold them back. Dank u Nene Ukolesa. Dank jullie my article gelezen. Thank you for reading my article, and have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. One of the programs that a National Peace Corps Association introduced to help evacuated volunteers was one that was long in the works, but needed to be brought online right away to help these thousands of evacuated volunteers. And here to give us just a real brief overview of the Global Reentry Program is Dan Baker, the Director of Global Reentry.
Thanks, Stephen, and it's really my pleasure to introduce this program to those of you who may not know about it. It is very new. about 3 months old now, and in direct response to the COVID-19 evacuation back in March, Peace Corps, NPCA I should say, identified resources to begin this program that had been envisioned for quite some time, that provides a bridge between service and life as an RPCV, and the ability for RPCVs to accomplish the third goal, but also get the support that they need for career services, for other services that they need, such as identification of volunteer opportunities, connections to affiliate groups. We're very pleased to have provided a series of webinars in the first months, the option to sign up for a mentorship program, and we've recently launched a podcast on career services that you can find called Jobs with Jody. But I just want to say thank you to the community who has made this possible. Without community members like our RPCV donors, this sort of service would not be possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm going to jump in here. I'm Ann Baker, no relation to Dan Baker. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I'm the Vice President of NPCA and a returned Peace Corps volunteer from Fiji, 1985 to 1987. I wear many hats in my roles at NPCA, but one that particularly inspires me involves the annual selection of the Harris Wofford Global Citizen Award, honoring an outstanding global leader who grew up in a country where Peace Corps volunteers served and whose life was significantly influenced by Peace Corps. Unfortunately, this year, due to the global pandemic, we are not able to present an award. Any conversations about the Peace Corps and its future require the most important voices of all. Those are the people of the countries hosting Peace Corps volunteers. What do they see as the need for Peace Corps as we look to the future of our changed and ever-changing world? How has America's image and/or relationship in their country been impacted by recent events in the US? How must Peace Corps change to be relevant to the 21st century? For this perspective, we turn today to 3 of our past Wofford Award winners from 3 different continents and 3 very different time zones, which is why we asked them to record their remarks. I'm pleased to introduce first the 2019 awardee, Luis Argueta of Guatemala, film director and producer whose work helps audiences better understand people on the margins, including The Silence of Leto, Guatemala's first Oscar submission. Over to Luis.
As you said, Anne, we are at an unprecedented situation worldwide because of this pandemic. It is a perfect time to ask some very basic questions about humanity in general and about the Peace Corps in particular. From what I have seen here in Guatemala, the pandemic has revealed the vast differences between a small group of people who have a lot and the large majority who have very little. It has also revealed in its stark nakedness the structural deficiencies of states like Guatemala, where the economic disparities are tremendous, but also where the neglect of the large population for many, many years have caused the current critical situation, where for over 50 years, people's basic needs like education and today, it's obvious, health have been not addressed. I hopefully will come back to this at the end, but the response in Guatemala has been to create hospitals and to augment the number of beds that can be occupied by people who are ill with the COVID-19. I think that that looks like a great solution, but in a system where we don't have the basic access to minimal health care, this is not the solution. And I think that by addressing this particular need and by the Peace Corps focusing on the basic health need of rural communities, we can start focusing on the future. Because when you need to go to a hospital to treat a minor illness that could be treated by a local health post, not even a clinic in the rural areas, I think we would be serving the communities in a very different way. Something that I have been particularly focusing my work for the past 12 plus years is migration. And these structural deficiencies and these major differences in the country have provoked what to me is one of the most crucial issues of our times: forced displacement, forced migration, and asylum seeking. The current situation is not making those things better. And even if borders today are closed, once they open, and we hope that will be sooner than later, people will be forced again to leave their homes. So again, what is the Peace Corps to do at a time like this? I think it is to go and work at the very basic community level in helping better these conditions that are making it impossible for people to stay at home and be with their family and prosper and be healthy. I don't think that is a time to be shy about our common links and our historical connections. I think that the same way that in the streets of the US and in other countries, but especially in the US, people are protesting racial inequality, and people are coming to terms with our own privileges. It is a time for the Peace Corps to realize that every volunteer who comes to a host country comes with great privilege. And it is to the betterment of everybody if we self-reflect on our position in these communities. I think that at the same time that we self-reflect on our role and our privileges and the privileges of volunteers, we should look at the historical ties between the host countries and the US. It is a time of many contradictions. Guatemalan immigrants and immigrants from many other countries are today in the US working and considered in many instances essential workers. However, they also are risking being detained and deported. And they're also suffering the effects of the pandemic in larger numbers as are other minorities and more vulnerable populations in the US. So I think that we must recognize this. We must recognize that the Peace Corps does not operate in a vacuum. It operates as part as part of a larger government structure. and that, yes, it represents the best America can offer, but it also has to be very conscious of the current image of the US around the world, because very unfortunate isolationist policies. So at the same time that we're reaching out to host countries, and hopefully we will be receiving many more Peace Corps volunteers in the future, they're not issuing visas for my country fellowmen to travel to the US. There is the threat of cutting visas even for exchange students who pay full tuition at US universities, let alone temporary workers who go pick the crops in the fields of the US. So we must be conscious of these contradictions, and we must relearn the history between our countries. One of the privileges that we should look at is the fact that as the pandemic was declared, Peace Corps volunteers were sent home. Fortunately, they were able to go home and are now with their families. However, this took them away from a place where they had committed to work, and where people without that privilege, that choice, had to remain in a more vulnerable position. So definitely, to me, this is a time of meditation, of self-reflection and self-analysis, and as hard as it might seem, to look forward to the future with hope. I wish everybody the best now and in the days to come.
Muchas gracias, Luis. Well said. Our second awardee that we'll hear from today, from 2013, is Dr. Mohammed Sheikh Nurain Saeed of Kenya, volunteer, philanthropist, and humanitarian engaged in a wide range of medical service and human rights activities on the local, national, and international levels. Dr. Saeed.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be given this chance to share with you some experiences. I think this is a great chance, and I think I should talk on three episodes, if I can say, for the Peace Corps. Peace Corps came at the correct time when many countries just gained their experiences. Many countries just gained their experiences and their independence, and the young people who came in were disciplined, and they really interacted with the community. I think people knew very little about this United States, and with the coming of the Peace Corps volunteers, and who worked mainly in the rural areas, people came to know more about the states. And that's the time, during the cold time, people were just here. With the coming of the Peace Corps volunteers, who interacted with the committees, people come to learn more about them, and interacted, and discussions took place, and people who were at home felt at home with the volunteers who came, and the volunteers themselves felt at home, and the aim of the Peace Corps, I think, was achieved immediately, because they are usually technical people who came to advise, in certain areas. At those days, my majority of them were teachers. And I'm happy to say that most of the people who went through those schools, special high schools, and because of the Peace Corps, they went through their school very well and did very well, and they have really served the community. I think that's the main aim of the Peace Corps, to empower the people, and they really empowered them. As the years went on, especially in those other fields also, the Peace Corps volunteers, and the work they did was marvelous, and it was great. I think the technical team, whether it is in agriculture or whether it is in other empowering people, they did a good job, and they opened also the policy of the American government was seen on the ground as it is, because it is when you see and talk to people and exchange ideas is when you know more about the country. And it came in as a cultural exchange in the matter, because we learned more about the American culture as we learned our other fields. We also learned more about the American culture and American people, and we appreciate it. But after the cold, those early 60s, you know, and things keep on changing. Then the era came, this other era, which I can say of the era of terrorism, which really affected the work done by the Peace Corps volunteers in several countries. In some countries, they couldn't go to deep in some areas. And as things change, especially in Kenya, they have been to be pulled out of the country, which was very sad, because the volunteers themselves, wherever they were very welcome, and they have integrated with people, and they were very people, and people are happy with them. But when policy is made up there and things happen, you just move. So that also interfered a bit with the work of the Peace Corps volunteers. And now this other era came now of this pandemic. I think this is a big blow to the movement, to the Peace Corps itself, and unfortunately to Kenya, because we were just planning to bring in new Peace Corps volunteers, and we are ready to receive them. And because after they were pulled out about 7 years ago, they are coming back. And unfortunately, all of a sudden, this pandemic came and it has interfered. Now, this is a very difficult time, especially for the work of the Peace Corps, because the Peace Corps volunteers work with communities in their communities, and they interact with the communities. With this pandemic, which we don't know how long it will take, it is going to be very difficult. So unfortunately, that interaction is no longer there, because when people are living together and working together, they learn from each other, and they learn also each other's culture, and know even how to prepare traditional dishes, and we enjoy ourselves. We shall miss all that. How can the Peace Corps change and work from without outside the country? They're supposed to be in, the volunteers. How can they work? This is a big challenge, and I think this we have to look at it very critically. And because I don't see volunteers coming back to their countries in the near future. So I think the best thing is to plan and see how we can interact. And I think what you are doing now through Zoom, most these days, people have learned to communicate and pass their messages. If a lot of meetings are taking place through Zoom, people are working from home. Is it possible to give some technical advice from home? So that's what we should look on. How can we revive or continue with the work that the Peace Corps volunteers are doing in their stations, which is now left? And I'm sure they have left, and I'm sure that the local people that are trained can do some work. But I think it's a continuous training which goes on. How can we survive during this, this pandemic? We need to look at ourselves and bring our heads together and see how the work can be done. And we have seen international conferences taking place through Zoom. And is it possible to, at least to some extent, carry on with the work we are doing in the stations we were through Zoom? I know it is difficult, but so that's an area we can look at. The other issue is that the American situation, you know, because just recently people were really shocked when they said that students who are there to go to come back. And I'm very happy that that decision was revised. So it is just such decisions which are made sometimes, unfortunately, affect the people, the ordinary people who have got these children there and who are studying there, whom they hope that they'll get the education they need in America and then come back and serve. So if all of a sudden they say that now because of this pandemic, you have to go back and study otherwise, it becomes difficult, and I'm happy that the division is done. But also, if I can mention also what happened recently in the States, especially the brutality which is going on, that really affected so many people all over the world. And I'm glad that things are being worked out, and I hope things which should have changed a long time ago should change now, and people should be respected. And people are very sensitive, especially in human rights, you know. People are saying that, especially this America, are saying that they're big democracy, and usually they're the first people to talk about and harass third world countries when there is abuse of human rights. And here is the people we are looking at, especially the security guys and themselves doing such things. And as human beings, I think we should all learn to live with each other and respect each other and work together. I think with those few remarks, if I need to add some more, I will add. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saeed. And finally today, I'm pleased to share some comments from our 2018 awardee, Kul Chandra Gautam of Nepal, a diplomat, public policy expert, peace advocate, and former Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF. Kul.
Greetings, dear friends. I want to thank the National Peace Corps Association for this opportunity to share my views on the future of the Peace Corps from the perspective of a host country, in my case, Nepal. I have had 5-decade-long and happy association with the Peace Corps since I was a 7th grade student in the hills of Nepal. My wonderful Peace Corps teachers were instrumental in helping transform my life. And the 4,000 plus Peace Corps volunteers who have served in Nepal have contributed much to my country's development. I feel sad that because of the COVID pandemic, the Peace Corps had to temporarily withdraw all its volunteers from all countries, including Nepal. Today, I join my fellow panelists from Guatemala and Kenya to address some weighty questions about the future of the Peace Corps from our perspective as global citizens and that of our own home countries. I deeply appreciate the soul-searching motivation for our reflection at this time of historic convulsion in the US, triggered by the Black Lives Matter movement and the COVID crisis. Recent events have made all of us introspect deeply about combating systemic racism and more broadly promoting social justice and ending the long legacy of racial, ethnic, religious, and gender-based disparities. We find this phenomenon not just in America, but in all countries where the Peace Corps serves. Let me try to address these issues in a holistic and broad perspective. During the past century, the United States has been the world's greatest superpower. There have been 3 major sources of America's superpower status in the world: its economic prosperity, its military strength, and its cultural vibrancy. America has been the richest country in the world for nearly 2 centuries. The US has only 4% of the world's population, but 15% of the world's GDP and 30% of the world's billionaires. But we also find in America grotesque inequality and great poverty in the midst of plenty. It is the only rich country in the world without universal health coverage. In terms of people's health and well-being, the US is no longer a world leader. The fact that the US has more cases and deaths from COVID-19 than any other country in the world is a telling example of how America's vast wealth fails to protect its people's health. America's military strength has also been unparalleled in recent history. Currently, the US spends more than $700 billion annually on defense. That is close to 40% of the world's military spending. But this is increasingly becoming a burden without proportionate benefits for America. The trillions of dollars that America spends on its military is increasingly becoming counterproductive. Instead of winning friends, America's military might is turning people into enemies and even terrorists. Look at what the trillions in military spending have produced in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, the Arab world, and even in Latin America, where a wave of anti-Americanism is seen. So, dear friends, I believe it is now time to reorient the American economy, drastically reduce military spending, and redirect it to end poverty, to reduce inequality, to provide health care and quality education for all, and to protect the earth from the climate crisis. This is where America's third strength comes into play. America's educational, scientific, and cultural vibrancy have earned the US tremendous soft power in the world. 40% of the world's Nobel Prize winners have been Americans. More than 50% of the world's Nobel laureates are trained in America. And 60 of the world's 100 best universities are in America. The American scientific, technological, and cultural innovations have enveloped the whole world. That is what gives America a positive, soft power for the good of the world. I consider the Peace Corps as one element of that benevolent American soft power. I dare say that less than $500 million that America spends annually on the Peace Corps touches more ordinary people's hearts and helps nurture peace and friendship in the world than the many billions the US spends on military aid to developing countries. I recall that was precisely the vision of President John F. Kennedy when he established the Peace Corps. Kennedy envisioned the Peace Corps as an opportunity for young Americans to better understand the challenges of living in a developing country, to impart their knowledge and skills, and to help overcome poverty and underdevelopment. Those are precisely the building blocks for peace and prosperity. It is in that spirit of solidarity and empathy that makes America or Nepal or any other country truly great. To paraphrase the late Senator Teddy Kennedy, to make America great again, it is better to send in the Peace Corps than the Marine Corps. I wish so much that President Trump had been a Peace Corps volunteer. If he had the Peace Corps experience and wanted to make America great again, he would have done so by responding to the greatest challenges of our times, the COVID pandemic, systemic racism, global poverty, and climate crisis in a very different manner. Let me now reflect on two questions that the NPCA has asked us. How can the Peace Corps be a true partner with host countries in the new post-COVID world? And how must the Peace Corps change to be relevant for the 21st century? Well, even before the COVID destabilized the world, we already had a universally agreed global agenda called the Sustainable Development Goals. Those goals, with dozens of specific and time-bound targets to be achieved by 2030, include ending extreme poverty and promoting prosperity with equity, protecting the environment, safeguarding people's human rights. They were endorsed by all countries of the world, including the United States, at the United Nations in 2015. The SDGs comprise a non-partisan agenda, so all of us can support them, whether you are a Republican or Democrat or neither. The Peace Corps volunteers already promote these goals in their work as teachers, health promoters, agriculture extension workers, and a variety of other vocations. What is needed now is to refine the skills of the Peace Corps volunteers to ensure that their services are provided to truly empower local people and communities. Like all other institutions are doing at this time, the Peace Corps too would benefit from an organizational soul searching to root out any trace of racism, gender discrimination, or a colonial mentality that may occasionally and inadvertently influence its work and mission. I honestly believe that the Peace Corps can help transform the multiple crises facing the US and the world into opportunity for achieving sustainable development goals. I know from my own personal experience and observation that the Peace Corps volunteers can make a transformational impact on the lives of many ordinary people and future leaders of the world. Dear friends, our increasing interconnected world demands global solidarity, not charity, to solve global problems that transcend national borders, like the specter of war, terrorism, racism, climate change, and pandemics like COVID-19. I sincerely believe that the Peace Corps can be the greatest organization dedicated to promote such global solidarity at the people-to-people level. Let us remember that solidarity, unlike charity, is a two-way street. The Peace Corps experience is just as important for the education and enlightenment of the Peace Corps volunteers as it is for them to help their host communities. More than any other group of Americans, I believe that the returned Peace Corps volunteers can instill a sense of more enlightened America as part of, not apart from, a more just, peaceful, and prosperous world. So I count on the Peace Corps to survive and thrive and help build an enlightened post-COVID America and the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cool. Very well said. And thank you to all of you for your perspectives, your wisdom, your advice, and your challenges to us as a Peace Corps community. We need to hear from you. We know there are a lot more amazing individuals like Luis, Mohammed, and Cool. Please share their stories with us. We accept nominations for the Wofford Award at any time. Our next winner will be honored, hopefully, during the 60th anniversary celebrations in 2021.
Thank you very much, Anne. Stephen Saum here again. Oops, here. Thank you very much, Anne. Right. One of the volunteers who is part of our Unfinished Business series is a woman named Lucy Baker, no relation to Anne or Dan, who are on our staff, who is serving in Mongolia. And here's Lucy Baker's Unfinished Business.
Hi, my name is Lucy, or in Mongolian, Sandetska no namad Lucy Gedik. I'm from San Francisco, and I was a public health education volunteer in Mongolia for 22 months before I was evacuated. This evacuation has been painful for me because I essentially left behind my life. I had friends and family and work and purpose. I had recently been accepted to be third-year volunteer, a Peace Corps volunteer leader. So a lot of my community members are asking me now, when are you coming back? When can we see you again? And I wish I could give them a straight answer, but nobody has answers now. And that kind of question mark around our work is very painful. I had recently received one of the last, I think, Let Girls Learn grants in order to create a health camp, health and English camp in my community, which would have bridged the gap between countryside students who do not have as many opportunities and the urban students, the people who live in city centers. I'm very passionate about sex education, and one of the things that we are going to focus on is lessening stigma around talking about sex and different kinds of sex and gender identity and sexual orientation. And it's very painful to not have been able to do that, to not have been able to finish that and provide that kind of service to my community. I really hope that Peace Corps will be able to return to Mongolia. Mongolia loves Peace Corps, and Peace Corps volunteers love Mongolia. It's a rich culture and wonderful people. Everyone is so hospitable. And I really hope that in enough time, Peace Corps will send volunteers back and be able to continue the wonderful work that has been going on in the country.
All right, thank you, Lucy. As we've heard a number of times today, one of the important areas that Peace Corps has work to do, that our nation has work to do, and that we have work to do around the world is combating systemic racism. At National Peace Corps Association, we put together a hub of resources, news, and information, including where you can find what we at NPCA are doing to tackle systemic racism as part of the Peace Corps community, place to gather ideas, and we hope to chart progress in the months and years to come. I'd like to turn things over now to Ann Baker, once again, to introduce the next big important section of the work that we're doing, which starts directly with what we're seeing right now in terms of tackling systemic racism. Ann, could you please introduce our big ideas section?
Thank you so much, Stephen. Over the last 2 weeks, we held 8 town halls to engage our community in discussions on topics related to the future of Peace Corps. The big ideas that follow here are the product of those discussions. They will be included in a compilation that will be used to engage with the key stakeholders in the Peace Corps community, the Peace Corps Agency and NPCA leadership, policymakers, donors, and our constituency of over 250,000 individuals who share the Peace Corps experience. We'll cover 4, take a quick video break, then the other 4, each for no more than 5 minutes each. We start today with a town hall that encompassed the issues that overarched all topics and was touched upon to some degree in all town halls. Here to give us the summary of the town hall on fostering diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is NPCA Board Director and Peace Corps staff member from 2012 to 2015, Corey Griffin.
Thanks, Ann. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up someplace? Stephen, can you hear me? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Again, today's town hall or rather session is really important around the culmination of the events that we've been living through as a society. And on the subject of fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, I'd like to first just take a moment to do what both Glenn did as well as Jody in recognizing the giants that we've recently lost, the giant of the persons who helped to lead some of the change that we're all hoping to advance in this particular discussion, and that is with the loss of the Honorable John Lewis and also Mr. C.T., the Reverend C.T. Vivian. These are 2 iconic figures in our nation's history who fought against discrimination, racism, and inequity, inequality in a time during the civil rights movement and up until their deaths. John Lewis said, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? And I can't consider a more appropriate call and reminder of the responsibility that our community has to own in this conversation. So I want to first start by saying a huge thanks to all of those who attended the session, the town hall. I want to also just say thanks to those who helped to make it happen, NPCA staff, and all of the others who were involved. Our hope for the conversation was to create a safe space where the Peace Corps community could have courageous and open dialogue about racism, given the current affairs in our nation. It was an opportunity for us to examine ourselves. It was an opportunity for us to examine our culture. It was an opportunity for us to also examine our service. And that is our service both abroad and here at home, but through the lens of diversity, inclusion, and equity. I think it's fair to say that it delivered on its promise, and for a spirited and courageous conversation. While it was a good start, I think that the feedback we received suggests that there's much more work to be done. There was also a spirited dialogue happening simultaneously in the chat. And it is further evidence of the fact that there is so much more work to be done on the subject of racism and its relation to our community. And then finally, I like to take a moment and thank our two panelists that helped with the discussion. And that is Melita Fogel and Eris Hines, who both did an amazing job of sharing their stories and the experiences of other Peace Corps volunteers. And I would ask everyone, if you have a moment, to go back and view the panel discussion if you've not already done so, but also seek out the letter that Melita referenced in her presentation from Sergeant Shriver. A very, very important letter to really provide the context for the discussion that we had, and I think the work that has to go, that we must do going forward. And Director Olson framed it very nicely in terms of the three areas that we focused on. We had breakout groups that really helped us to think about how we approach pre-service, recruitment of volunteers, how as a community we can do a much better job of recruiting people of color, and then the experience as a Black volunteer. What is that like? We heard stories about it. I'm sure we've only scratched the surface, but things were illuminated around policies and experiences and regard from the communities that we even serve. And then lastly, the conversation also took shape around the return volunteer experience. And how do we respond as a community given the current issues? How do we do so with sensitivity? And then how do we continue to look forward as lifelong, volunteers of service to ensure that we keep focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey. This now segues into our next town hall on recruiting the next generation of volunteers. I will pass the baton over to Kelly Tucker, who served in Peru from 2011 to 2013.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Please, someone stop me if you can't hear me. And all right, so I'm here to report out on the town hall that we had about recruiting the next generation of Peace Corps volunteers. And it's an excellent segue from the previous town hall that they did the readout, which was focusing on diversity and inclusion, because our entire recruitment discussion was kind of couched in that concept that
Peace Corps does have a diversity challenge, and I wanted to specifically highlight from that we don't just mean ethnic diversity, also age diversity and socioeconomic diversity and cultural diversity. And as our friend earlier gave his great speech about the deaf and hard of hearing and different abilities and things like that. So all of our recruitment discussions, we're talking about how Peace Corps just needs to get the word out, and then also needs to get the word out to a variety of people. So our three big ideas that came out we actually had eight breakout groups within our town hall. So these are three themes that showed up from all of them. It was quite a lot of ideas to put into one place. The first one was kind of leaning into the idea of joint promotion and recruitment for all national service programs. We, of course, are Peace Corps volunteers and we love the Peace Corps, but there's also Teach for America and AmeriCorps and Senior Corps and all of those things. And so this idea of promoting national service as a concept and then helping interested people find their way to the correct program. And then emphasizing the importance of partnerships with universities. We have campus recruiters and strategic recruiters. Those budgets seem to have been slashed very recently, and I know that resources aren't unlimited, but if we can do something to promote these partnerships and then actually expand upon the concept of recruiters being dedicated solely to the university community, but remember that universities are part of a community at large. And so if we are lucky enough to have a recruiter stationed at a university, empower them and make it part of that understanding with the university that that recruiter can serve the larger community and any interested groups there. And then we really wanted to reiterate the vast potential of the RPCV network as a whole. You know, Peace Corps is a community. We are a group of people at our soul, and everything that we do is because of the power of who we are. And so this idea, the roles of RPCVs through NPCA and other affiliate groups, and how can we maybe formalize or systematize the role that Return Peace Corps volunteers can play in recruitment. So it's not just a few campus recruiters, it's not just Peace Corps headquarters staff, because there's just so much knowledge and so much experience. And Peace Corps is such a personal choice. You know, the whole network of RPCVs can open up the opportunity for more one-on-one conversations and things like that. And then the next list that we have is just a few conversation topics that didn't fit into our three overall goals, but were really insightful comments that I wanted to make sure were shared. And before that, I also want to thank, we had 4 speakers, Victor Ochen, Carrie Lowry, Misha Robinson, and Jeffrey Janis kicked us off with sharing their insights and sort of fostered all the conversation that we had in our breakout groups. But so these key topics to highlight is that, one, the messaging and marketing of Peace Corps starts from the moment someone hears about it. So if they hear about it when they are college students, they figure it out from there. But what if we could build awareness for Peace Corps starting at a younger age and give them more time, give people more time to learn about it and build it into their plan as they move forward. Also, we just sort of threw out the question of what is an ideal candidate, not just skills and education, but also attitude and personality and emotional maturity and creativity and all those other things. How can we decide what that is and then recruit that person? And I'm going to skip to my last one first, which is we need to stop just speaking to ourselves. Volunteerism, global volunteerism, is inherently a team sport. It's a partner game, and we need to take these conversations when we have new ideas and take them to our partners. And the last thing was just an insightful comment that I think many of us, at least in my breakout group, we just sort of started with how thoughtful it was that Victor Ochen, our first speaker, actually called us from Uganda, and he has worked with the Peace Corps for quite some time. He leads an organization there called the African Youth Initiative, and he's been supported by several Peace Corps volunteers. And so he called in to chat with us about his experience and about his work. And something that he asked us all is, you know, where's the peace in Peace Corps? And we all talk about our work and our technical support and things that we can provide. But he came at us with this idea of, you know, without peace, there can't be sustainable change. And so the volunteers that he's had the opportunity to work with in his organization, they had things like peace camps and conversations about how to highlight the peace in Peace Corps. And our town hall didn't have a concrete answer to that question, but we wanted to share it with all of you as part of the community that, you know, the Peace Corps, the core is the team, but the peace is just also this ethos we bring with us. So with that, I'm going to leave it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Kristen Grauer-Gray served as a high school science teacher in Tanzania from 2007 to 2010, and 2 terms as a response volunteer in Liberia from 2016 to 2017 and 2018 to 2020. She'll be taking us through recalibrating Peace Corps' programs for the future.
Great, thank you very much, Anne. So I want to start by thanking the panelists who are on our town hall. Lex Riefel is the source of several of our big ideas, and Julie and Joyce spoke about climate change programs. So our first big idea, as I was listening to the different speeches, it just came back over and over again to what Mr. Kulchandra Gautam said, which is that solidarity, unlike charity, is a two-way street. So our first big idea is about making Peace Corps a two-way exchange program, where not only do volunteers go to host countries, but volunteers from host countries come to serve in the US. And that would really match better with our values as Peace Corps. You know, Peace Corps is about mutual exchange of ideas and knowledge. And it's true that volunteers are learning from their host communities. But people who are not able to learn, to leave and join Peace Corps are not getting that experience. And, you know, he also talked about a colonial mentality. When we come to them and they don't come to us, it builds up that mentality. So Peace Corps should really consider looking at how to become a two-way exchange program. Our second big idea is about customized assignments. And this is especially important for volunteers who are older and have specialized skills. Sometimes Peace Corps has posted all these different assignments, and someone may have skills that don't fit their assignments, but they're really useful skills that a host country needs. So if Peace Corps could give the option of letting people propose assignments, of putting out their skills and say, this is what I can do, that would really be helpful in recruiting more of these older and mid-career experts. Our third big idea was about climate change. Many of our host countries are already seeing the impacts of climate change. We have countries in the South Pacific that are seeing rising seas. We see farmers in Africa dealing with droughts and floods. And Peace Corps is really in a unique position to work on the grassroots level and to help our communities understand, prepare, and adapt. Most of the participants in the town hall agreed that climate change does not really need to be a new program, because current programs in education, agriculture, health, and environment, they really all overlap with climate change. So climate change would be strongest as a cross-cutting initiative, where all volunteers are trained in climate change programs and work on it in relation to their sector. We have 5 other conversation topics that were not exactly big ideas, but were more about strengths and weaknesses. In some countries, Peace Corps has very strong partnerships with local NGOs or with international organizations. They're effective, they help make programs more sustainable, and they help increase the reach of Peace Corps. So those programs should be maintained and expanded. Second, Peace Corps is very, very good at some things. Peace Corps is excellent at building community relationships, at integration, as well as culture and language training. So as these big ideas are integrated, Peace Corps should not forget these strengths, but rather should build on them. As we know, everyone has weaknesses, and some of the historic weaknesses and continuing weaknesses in Peace Corps have been monitoring and evaluation, as well as sustainability. Monitoring and evaluation is often focused on process, but it needs to focus more on impacts. Congress loves numbers, so Peace Corps also loves numbers, but a lot of things we do are more qualitative, and those qualitative measures should be included. As you've heard many times this afternoon, diversity and inclusion is a cross-cutting challenge that Peace Corps faces. Peace Corps needs to work harder to make volunteers and staff feel more included, have a truly welcoming environment, recruit more diverse volunteers, and add more training on racism and bias. Lastly, we asked a question. We asked, would Peace Corps be stronger as a private NGO? And the answer that was heard in the town hall was a resounding no. While many participants said yes, a private organization could have more autonomy, Peace Corps would lose the credibility that comes from being backed by a government. Peace Corps volunteers would lose the benefits that are provided by the federal government. The funding might become greater, but it would also become less reliable, and the priorities of Peace Corps could be changed by having to search for funding. So overall, we had those 3 big ideas: the two-way exchange, the customized assignments, and climate change. And we suggest that Peace Corps keep and build on its strengths, but also work on those weaknesses. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you everyone for your service in Peace Corps.
Thank you so much, Kristen. We follow the discussion of the first goal of Peace Corps to one on re-examining the second and third goals of Peace Corps. David Jarmel served twice in Peace Corps, first in Nepal from 1977 to 79, and then with his wife, whom he met in Nepal, in Moldova from 2016 to 2018.
Thank you, Anne, and hello from Durham, North Carolina. You can see on the slide just some of the big issues that this town hall identified. I'll try to summarize the main conclusions, and I'll start with a point I made in my own presentation at the town hall. Peace Corps has 3 goals, but you wouldn't know it from how volunteers are recruited, trained, and supported. The chart on our slide shows approximately how I divided my time in training in Moldova. I spent more than half of my time on language learning. I spent almost all of the rest on job training and cultural training, plus many sessions on Peace Corps policies, medical security, and so forth. I spent almost no time on Goal 2 and none on Goal 3. PCVs in other countries tell a similar story. Ironically, about a decade ago, the largest survey ever was carried out among our PCVs. They were asked to reflect on how they had the biggest impact. Their answer wasn't their job or secondary project. It was goals 2 and 3, the very thing that Peace Corps often treats as a would be nice add-on to the real business of job 1. Just imagine how much more impactful volunteers could be if Peace Corps treated goals 2 and 3 as top-level priorities. Without these goals, Peace Corps is primarily a development organization. With them, it truly embraces its mission of promoting world peace and friendship. The Peace Corps Third Goal Office has encouraged PCVs to share their stories in interesting ways. It's organized contests to highlight volunteer videos, blogs, and storytelling. On the Peace Corps Stories site, volunteers tell stories in their own words. A lot of this work is terrific, but some participants in our town hall said they'd never heard of it. Their program staff didn't consider it important. If members of our own community are unaware of these initiatives, it's little wonder the general public often seems surprised that Peace Corps still exists. Peace Corps also tells volunteer stories on its social media platforms. PCVs are using social media as well, which is great. Yet, Peace Corps does little to train them in doing this. I had training in community mapping, cultural sensitivity, let girls learn, emergency evacuations, sexual assault, HIV/AIDS, and on and on. But as for communicating with my host country about the diversity of America, or with people back home about the realities of the developing world, there was next to nothing. Again, based on what was discussed at our town hall, my experience wasn't unique. Goal 2 and Goal 3 are central to Peace Corps' mission. They're not just a nice thing for volunteers to do in their spare time. Peace Corps needs to hire and train staff not only for their development and project expertise, but for how they can advance the other 2 goals. It should add staff with expertise in communications, preferably in every country, but at least regionally. Every post should have a PCV committee to promote volunteer communications. The goal in this isn't to tell happy stories about American saviors, but to promote honest dialogue through ethical storytelling, including on issues such as racial diversity and racial justice and diversity. Indeed, much of our town hall's discussion focused on the need for goals 2 and 3 to be reinterpreted to directly address these kinds of issues. Peace Corps should also pursue more direct coordination with university programs, State Department exchange programs, and others, and expand opportunities for host country partners to share their own stories. Just as with other priorities, such as helping girls learn or improving community health, Peace Corps needs to hold staff and PCVs accountable for goals 2 and 3 and measure its results. As numerous participants pointed out, Peace Corps can't succeed with these goals on its own. It needs to work much more closely with RPCVs and NPCA, as well as with affiliate groups and others, and expand efforts such as Worldwide Schools and Speakers Match. It should coordinate with NPCA to transition departing volunteers to RPCV groups, which requires a lot more than an information sheet in the COS packet. Peace Corps is an amazing organization that can become even greater by finding a better balance among its three goals while remaining non-political and committed to its development agenda. It needs to give Goal 2 and Goal 3 the attention and resources they deserve. Thanks.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you all for these first presentations and the big ideas. We'll be picking up the second half momentarily. One of the things that we did want to mention is that in addition to asking volunteers to tell their stories about their unfinished business, that NPCA also introduced a program with our community fund to help these evacuated volunteers. Many of them had projects that they had started, had been approved by Peace Corps, but the funding was cut off when the volunteers were evacuated. That doesn't mean that the work wasn't still important, and it doesn't mean that the work still couldn't be done by a flexible NGO like NPCA. So many of you have stepped up to support these programs. So we want to say thank you for that. The community fund has already fully funded a number of projects, and there are a number of others that are on our website that are looking for support with literacy projects, with rainwater catchment programs, with community development, economic development, and empowering women, and on and on. So thank you for those who have supported, and we'd invite anyone to help support those with a gift as well. Among the other volunteers with unfinished business is Ryan Blackwell, who is serving in Togo.
Bedog Belo, Nkonyene Ryan Blackwell, Alo Kokuvi, Ojim Kudagbe. So that was Ebe, a language that is widely spoken in southern Togo. I said that my name is Ryan Blackwell, or Kokuvi, which is what I was known as in my community. It means that I was born Wednesday. So if there's anything else you want to know about me, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and I just got back from serving for almost 3 years as an English and gender education volunteer in Togo. It was a wonderful experience. Unfortunately, we recently had to evacuate. I had to leave my colleagues, my friends, my neighbors, and my students very suddenly. And I've never felt that connected to a community in my life. So it truly made my work there a pleasure and kind of a moral imperative. I've never felt that way about a job. So it's not easy leaving. In terms of unfinished business, we need to get the Peace Corps opened up again as soon as possible, because the Peace Corps Togo staff, both Togolese and Americans, are doing incredible work over there, especially supporting the Togolese education system and girls' education in the country. I worked a bit with Pathways Togo, which is a Peace Corps affiliated organization, which provides full scholarships all the way through university for outstanding female students. So it was a pleasure working with them as well. I can't really put into words how grateful I am for being able to be a part of the Peace Corps and be able to work over there. So thank you so much.
All right, now we're moving on to Big Ideas Part 2. To start the second half of our Big Ideas, we'll be talking about supporting Peace Corps volunteers during readjustment at home. I'd like to turn the stage over to Jennifer Gonzalez, RPCV Namibia, 2015 to 2018.
Thank you, Anne. And good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are. And I have the pleasure to recap for you our recent town hall discussion that took place on July 13th. The focus of this town hall was on supporting RPCVs during readjustment at home. And we had over 60 people contribute to the discussion and the big ideas. First of all, though, I would like to thank our plenary speakers, MEMORIAM Foote, who shared the results and recommendations from the Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security Survey that was administered to 461 evacuated volunteers. Sandy Giver presented information about volunteers who experienced trauma during service, and intercultural expert Lorette Benhold gave us 3 pieces of advice. First, acknowledge that the reentry process is real and nonlinear. Second, find a network and reach out. Third, get involved. And I have to say that these presentations really helped us set the stage for the discussions and big ideas that followed. First, big idea. We need to revamp medical services to lengthen healthcare coverage post-service. It's unrealistic to believe that we can rely on the idea that volunteers are able to get on a parent's insurance plan. We also need to acknowledge that the job hunt often takes 6 months or longer. Also related to health services is the access and stigma that's attached to receiving mental health services. This is of particular concern to evacuated volunteers that want to return or reapply to service. They feel that they could be denied or held back from service if they take advantage of the mental health services to address the trauma that was caused as a result of this evacuation. The second big idea is the need to expand non-competitive eligibility for all qualifying RPCVs. This would align with what is offered to the Peace Corps staff currently, and it would also acknowledge that not all RPCVs are ready for federal service immediately following their Peace Corps experience. Additionally, the federal hiring process is lengthy, and this time limit, especially in the current climate of COVID-19 and the number of evacuees, limits the possibilities of the NCE benefit. So these big ideas were informed by our conversations on topics that included a need for a longer and more standardized close of service. This could be thought of as maybe a reverse staging. Many RPCVs felt the ending of service and connection to Peace Corps was an abrupt end, leaving them a little bit disoriented and frustrated. Also, depending on the country of service, COS conferences were either hit or miss. Some had great experiences, but many others noted a lack of focus on the actual readjustment piece and more of a focus on completing paperwork. So, as part of the close of service and readjustment issues, participants also shared that we need to streamline and improve the process of sharing resources, both with current Peace Corps volunteers and returned Peace Corps volunteers. Participants all shared a variety of resources that are available, but these are found in many different places, websites, Facebook, WhatsApp groups, and not all are aware of many services or resources available. This includes the concern that many in the Peace Corps community are not hearing about the National Peace Corps Association. The key takeaway from this part of the discussion is we need a more centralized system for sharing and connecting people to resources. This is ever more important as many career services are no longer available through Peace Corps headquarters due to a closure of the Career Center in 2019. With this being said, we were promised career support as part of our recruitment to Peace Corps. We were told that we would have the support at the end of our service to help us get into the jobs and meet our future goals. The Peace Corps community feels let down by the recent closure and limiting of services from Peace Corps headquarters for returned volunteers. Fortunately, the National Peace Corps Association's Global Reentry Program has helped fill the gap with regular podcasts, the Mentor Match, and virtual trainings. Finally, RPCVs worldwide are doing what we do best and stepping up to fill gaps to support each other during readjustment for evacuated volunteers. The Peace Corps community of friends and returned volunteers has provided advice, rides, and housing. Over 300 have volunteered to serve as mentors to support career and education goals. One very impressive project that was shared was the creation of the RPCV Health Crusade group and website. This group offers a library of resources and options to connect to free services and that have been donated. These resources can be found at rpcvhealthcrusade.org. Thank you to all that have stepped up to support our community.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Next up, we welcome Stephen McBay, RPCV Paraguay, 2015 to 2018, to summarize communicating in and about our Peace Corps community.
Thank you, Anne. Make sure everybody can see me. I think it looks good. I'm happy to be reporting out on this important topic. So let's talk about communication. We distilled 3 big ideas from that town hall. I'm going to read all 3 up front, and then we'll circle back. So big idea number 1, be upfront and honest in talking about systemic racism and racial justice. Share contact information with NPCA, get volunteers plugged into the community, and show that we're the Peace Corps we all wanted to join, more needed than ever. So the first one, be upfront and honest in talking about systemic racism and racial justice. This is a human conversation, so we can get straight to the point. Systemic racism is real. It's baked into every institution around us, and Peace Corps is no different. George Floyd was not the first to suffer and die because of the system, and if you are paying attention, he already hasn't been the last. The initial response to George Floyd's murder rightly shook the Peace Corps community and started a heated conversation. It has brought to the surface problems that have existed in the agency for too long with respect to staff, host country nationals, and amongst Peace Corps volunteers themselves. This discussion is finally being had, and the community is optimistic and open to see where it goes. One word of caution that was brought up is to recognize past mistakes in this area and to not repeat them. Peace Corps community shares information, and yes, it is possible, has respectful discourse through social media. The Peace Corps Reddit page is a great resource. We all know the many Facebook groups, RPCV Jobs, COVID-19 Community Group, one was just mentioned. If you're on Instagram, the account at How a PCV puts it gently, arguably did more effective communicating with evacuated volunteers than headquarters did. Some communication requires listening, and right now, if you are listening, you'll clearly hear the communities challenging the Peace Corps' promotion of ICE positions on the RPCV Jobs page. If this is new to you, you can believe me that it is a real conversation that's being had. And we're trying to remember the topic at hand. This is racial justice. A casual observer would think that Peace Corps is ignoring the concerns of the community with respect to this issue, but they need to understand that it is not going to go away. If headquarters wants to improve communication with the Peace Corps community, this is a great place to start. Moving along, share contact info with NPCA and get volunteers plugged into the Peace Corps community sooner. For some countries, there was no mention of NPCA at their close of service. NPCA is only as strong as the community it fosters. Peace Corps volunteers need to know about NPCA before, during, and post-service. Peace Corps must make it a higher priority to share information for volunteers finishing their service, what resources are at their disposal, what groups can they tap into. As it stands, Peace Corps does not share volunteer information with NPCA. If the NPCA is truly a partner with Peace Corps, some compromise surely could be worked out. It would benefit the volunteers, provide them network opportunities, and will foster and promote a more diverse and engaged community. Furthermore, the NPCA would and has benefited by recognizing and collaborating with community outlets on social media and other blogs. And then finishing up, show that Peace Corps is the Peace Corps we all wanted to join. It's more needed than ever. The fact is, none of us would be spending our Saturday doing this if the Peace Corps didn't matter to us. Right now, the Peace Corps is vulnerable, and there are people that want to see the agency disappear. Luckily, there is bipartisan support for the idea of national service, and when Peace Corps is at its best, it is a model for how to integrate into communities, learn with them, and grow together. 2020 has been pretty challenging. Morale is down. People need to be reminded that there's a huge community of professionals that wake up attempting to contribute to the greater good, and the Peace Corps is a needed institution right now. We should remind them, ourselves, in this country, in this world, why we exist. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen. A key pillar of NPCA's work is to help Peace Corps be its best. So thank you to Charlene Lauriston, RPCV Guinea, 2016 to 17, for summarizing the discussion around Peace Corps policies.
Hello, everyone. Can you all see me? Okay, hi. First and foremost, I want to thank NPCA and everyone for joining us on this call for these very, very important and much needed conversations. I have the pleasure of providing a summary of the town hall meeting that focused on policy changes for the future of Peace Corps. Michael Eric Dyson once said, "For much of American history, race has been a Black culture's issue. Racism, a Black person's burden. Substitute Black with any other person of color, you've got the same problem. Whiteness, however, has remained constant, the unchanging variable, the silent unchanging variable." The health and safety of volunteers is Peace Corps' stated mission, yet Peace Corps continuously falls short on this in health policy enforcement, ignored racial injustices, and stigma associated with mental health needs of the volunteers and staff dealing with such issues. On the town hall meeting, RPCVs came together and discussed the following changes that they would like to see. We want for there to be an evaluation and recalculation of the recruitment process with a focus on engaging more Black, Indigenous, people of color, especially from low-income communities. Break down the financial and educational barriers and conduct more community recruitment, not just in colleges. Understand that financial barriers that existed before Peace Corps will continue after service. Therefore, provide the support to be successful in continuing the Peace Corps mission at home. This includes, of course, looking into things like the readjustment allowance policies, job protection for skilled workers who enter service, livable disability pay for those who are injured in service, expanded healthcare coverage, and robust mental health resources before, during, and after service. Be intentional in policy creation and reform, and of course, providing supportive policies that address race and racial inequities. Mental health needs of those dealing with racial injustices are often ignored, and of course, other crimes as well. And so this is the reason why we need more focus on mental health. We also want Peace Corps to be more transparent in their recruitment process about the potential for things such as racial and other mental health issues that may arise as a result of service. But most importantly, prioritize the reports of racial discrimination and establish disciplinary action steps to address them. All crime against humanity needs the same level of attention and response. We also discussed implementing and enforcing the laws that are passed. For example, the Sam Farr-Nick Castle Act to improve the safety and health of volunteers. We want hired, qualified professionals to address the health needs of our volunteers, including psychologists in the countries to address the mental health needs. Make racial equity a priority. Set up programs, trainings, and staff support needed to address these issues and keep Peace Corps relevant for the future. And last but not least, stop the cycle of structural racism. Silence and silencing of volunteers who raise these issues must stop. Face the truth about what was created and remake it to be more in line with the external identity of diversity and equity within the Peace Corps. I just want to leave this as food for thought. Black, Indigenous, people of color are victims of all types of crime, yet in the Peace Corps, their non-white racial identity and its possible connection to the crime that they experience is always ignored. We must name it to change it. Robin DiAngelo wrote in her book, White Fragility, that suspending individuality to focus on group identity is healthy for white people. Doing so has very different impacts of people of color. Racism is a public and global health issue in as much as it is a human and social issue. Now that the broken system has been identified, it is time to take action. As Ken Good said, one of the panelists on that town hall shared, change is possible in the Peace Corps. We have to build a broad base of consensus and willingness to move forward and stay on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlene, for your words and for your summary of that session. And now on to our final town hall report. All of this work needs funding behind it. So here to talk about funding the future of the Peace Corps is NPCA Board Emeritus and RPCV Bolivia from 2000 to 2002, Christina Owens.
Thank you, Anne. I'm honored to be able to give the update on the Town Hall Peace Corps funding and Capitol Hill mobilization. This town hall resulted in a deep discussion on how funding impacts everything in the Peace Corps, from recruiting our future Peace Corps volunteers, supporting our volunteers in the field, and engaging and supporting RPCs for a lifetime. Capitol Hill mobilization is an important part to make sure that the future of the Peace Corps continues. And as one of our panelists said, an RPCV congressional staff member mentioned that we have the next 6 to 9 months to put forth a new vision for the Peace Corps. So our discussions were vast and varied because funding impacts everything. And we had a couple big ideas. One is we need to collect and publicly report on Peace Corps' comprehensive impact. We all know that we come home, we return home, we serve in our countries, we come home, and we continue to serve in our communities. And to be able to capture that is really important. And as I said, this is the time to really do it and move forward. Some of the key conversations that we discussed was that it was critically important to find and engage the 230,000 returned Peace Corps volunteers and former staff members. Without identifying who they are, we won't have enough tools to be able to go to Congress and tell them about the impact that we have in our Peace Corps countries, but also here at home. We need to increase Peace Corps community contacts with our lawmakers, not just Congress, but in our communities, lawmakers at all levels. The work that we do. We also focus a lot on the underfunded elements of Peace Corps budget. And I want to start with the third goal. And without a doubt, the third goal has been underfunded. And it's often the first program to be eliminated when there's budget cuts. Many of the breakout sessions, we talked about perhaps even creating a fourth goal where we can address issues such as advocacy and working in our communities and talking about that. But others had also talked about expanding the third goal to mean more than just making presentations, blogging, or writing, but doing so much more, everything that we learned. Without a doubt, this town hall was not unique in recognizing we need to dismantle racism within the community. And the fact that there's programs like this and diversity is underfunded, we need to either get more funding or reprioritize our focus on dismantling racism within our own community. And finally, one of the other key topics that stood out is recruitment. By working with universities so we can expand and strengthen programs such as Peace Corps Prep and bringing back the Masters International. And this is one of the reasons why we need to expand those. They're currently underfunded, and it requires a lot of funding and reallocation of our current funds. Now as I close my remarks, I also want to make a special appeal to everyone. I want to encourage all of you to join us every year at and beyond at the National Day of Action. We want to continue to advocate for the Peace Corps. Our congressional representatives want to hear from us. We are the ones with the firsthand experience to what we did in our countries and also talk about what we've done since we've left. Many of us credit our success in our careers, in our life, because of our Peace Corps service. And our members of Congress hearing those stories is really important for them to really understand why it's important to fully fund the Peace Corps. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. So we have a moment here to stand up and stretch, if you'd like to do that. And I'd like to share with you one more unfinished business video from Jay Cho, who is serving in Kyrgyz Republic.
Salamat sp Kandaisis Meninatsum, Jay Cho. Hello, my name is Jay Cho. I'm from Gloucester, Virginia, and I've been serving as a Peace Corps volunteer since July 8th of 2019 in the Kyrgyz Republic. I've been serving as a TEFL teacher, teaching English as a foreign language at J. Mukambayev Secondary School in a small village called Kurmantu, located in the Tup region of the Isyk Oblast. There, I've been working with 5 other counterparts, or also known as English teachers, who have been well versed in the English language. Merimeje, Aseleje, Dinareje, Simbareje, and Sultanaeje. Through countless hours of training, scheduling, co-planning, and co-teaching, we were able to succeed our goal in trainings and eventually become successful co-teachers. I'm very much thankful to them forever, and I'd like to express my gratitude, and I hope to see them once again after this is all over. I will forever and foremost dearly miss my host family, my Appa and Ata, my mother and father, Dare Kaijin and Huanchbekagai, who are also respectable teachers and parents. I'll also miss my host siblings, Nurjan, my sister, Maksa Baike, my brother, and Kunduseje, my other sister. I will miss my neighbors, my community members, my faculty, staff, as well as 900 students from my school, primarily from grades 5th to 11th. But I will hope to one day see them again, and I wish them the best of luck in their future successes, goals, and careers. I will also miss the local natives at the dukuns, local shops, the post office, the hospitals, and the police station as well. My director, Bekjan Vavic, has always been very caring towards me, as well as our assistant director, the Zavuch, Nurgulej, as well as other staff members. There are some unfinished projects that I've left behind, one of them consisting of a resource center for learning English. I had hoped to build a resource center in the fall to help students, faculty, staff, and community members be well versed in the language and access materials necessary to further their education, whether it be notebooks, laptops, other computers, sound equipment, projectors, and other technology, as well as English books and literature. I hope to one day come back and finish my project that I've left unfinished in hopes of making J. Mukambayev a better place for students to gain an interminable interest for English and always stay on track. Thank you, and I hope everyone stays safe, and I'll be back as soon as possible.
All right, thank you, Jay. And now to introduce our next panel is Glenn Blumhorst, President and CEO of NPCA. Sounds like we may be having some technical problems here. I think we've done pretty good throughout the day, and thank you for your patience and as we've navigated this Zoom territory.
I can quickly introduce some of what we're going to be doing. So hello, everyone. My name is MEMORIAM Foot, and I'm a second-generation Peace Corps volunteer who was evacuated due to COVID-19 from Benin, where I served in the agricultural field from 2020. First, as others have done before me, I would like to start off by sharing condolences to Congressman John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, who were giants during the civil rights movement and should continue to serve as an inspiration for our current conversation. Congressman John Lewis said, "Never be afraid to make some noise and get in trouble, necessary trouble. If we want NPCA and the Peace Corps to move into a better future, we need to push for radical shifts in order to continue to push the envelope. If not, we risk losing Peace Corps to time." So to start off, I will also introduce some of the panelists that I've worked with. When we returned from getting evacuated, we formed a group with Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security, where we created a report that received over 450 responses on the experiences of evacuated volunteers. And we use this report to advocate to Congress on behalf of volunteers for PUA, healthcare, and other different topics. So I'm joined by Rock Loxley and Azura Fairchild. Rock volunteered in the Philippines as a coral reef preservation volunteer from 2018 to 2020. He also served in Moldova from 2005 to 2008 and was a Peace Corps recruiter from 2009 to 2016. Azura Fairchild was a Peace Corps response volunteer in Ukraine for the deaf education and English teacher. She's also a researcher for Ukrainian Sign Language. And we're also joined by Juana Bordas, if she would like to introduce herself as well. I don't know if she's on the call.
Yeah, you're gonna need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yes? Oh, good. Hi. I do want to say I'm one of the seniors on the panel here, and technology is what I rely on all of you for, so thank you. Intergenerational leadership is a key thing in all of the communities and people of color. I'm Juana, and I served in the Peace Corps way back in the 60s, 1964 to 66. And I've had an illustrious career since, we might say. It's been 54 years since I was in the Peace Corps. So I do want to share all of the things that have kind of happened since then that were based on my decision, which is the decision all of us made. We made a decision to serve and to put our lives in the service of humanity. And I think that's what makes people powerful, has made me powerful, and the Peace Corps powerful. I've spent my career building organizations for communities of color, particularly Latinos and Latina women, and also doing work in race and equity and trying to build the compassionate and good society.
Thank you. I don't know if is Glenn able to join us?
Yeah, Miriam, hi.
Okay.
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties myself here, so I'm sorry I missed that.
Okay, we've done the introductions. If you would like to do the questions, we can get into the panel.
Certainly will. And first, I just want to say thank you so much, Miriam. This was something I was really looking forward to. As we kind of started talking about this, it really just seemed the right way to do this was just to say, this is your panel discussion, and make it what you want, and put together something to reflect on all these big ideas that we have and your thoughts as the next generation of Peace Corps volunteers. And I'm just glad you invited me and asked me to continue to be a part of the conversation as part of your panel, and really looking forward to hearing your reflections on those thoughts. So really, this is there are questions about questions that you've put together that I think are really important that we need to be asking, not just you, but all of us as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing your answers and answering them and helping answer them myself, I would say. So let me, sorry, I have to pull them up here real quick because I had put them down somewhere. So this is directed to everyone for a brief response. As we envision the reentry process for volunteers, what do you think are the most important things to consider when supporting volunteers in the future post-service?
I'll take that one. So I served in 05 to 08, and then I served again in 18 to 20, so I was evacuated. But the first time that I finished my service, I came back into the 2008 economic depression. And so I started doing a lot of research, especially when I went to work for the agency. Thank you, Jody Olson, for helping me get a job back when we had an RPCV Career Center to make all that happen. And Peace Corps is known for a very long time that return volunteers have had more difficulty upon reentry rather than going into service. And in fact, that Peace Corps like itself termed reentry in a paper in the 90s, and they took it from the NASA program because reentry, is recognized as a very difficult process, as difficult as leaving the earth. Reentry is just as difficult. So we kind of took that in. Originally there was there was a paper written in the 90s called Psychological and Readjustment Problems Associated with Emergency Evacuation of Peace Corps Volunteers. And that really, like, for me, nailed down what some of the problems were. And so this is where we started to see that Peace Corps recognizing through its own surveys and own research that volunteers were having trouble with reentry to start with, but then evacuated volunteers were seeing double the amount of difficulties. So 265 volunteers were evacuated from Liberia, Philippines, and Yemen. The evacuated Peace Corps volunteers coined the term that this was a crisis of reentry. 51% of all RPCVs found reentry very difficult, and that was the highest difficulty rating on the survey. And all evacuees from this 1990 survey got a debriefing conference as part of COS, and that's how they kind of got these surveys. But basically, the stats are 30% of RPCVs experienced some sort of depression, whereas 60% of evacuated volunteers experienced depression. And then we see the stats doubling. So 30% for feeling of disorientation, 12% for periods of crying, 39% for a difficult transition back, 26% difficulty making decisions, 15% reported avoidance of thinking about Peace Corps as an experience, and 12% reported disturbing dreams. And you take all those percentages and double them, and that's generally what evacuated Peace Corps volunteers have been dealing with. And so I think that, you know, we are given 3 months of training to integrate into a community, and maybe at best we're given a 3-day conference, COS conference, to readjust to the States, but then no real support from the agency when we land. And especially with the discontinuation of the RPCV Career Center, pretty much all we have is RPCV groups and NPCA to help us make this transition. So what we need to do is really provide a landing pad for RPCVs, because we know it's difficult. The agency knows it's difficult. And I think that there's 2 ways to do this. And the first is that we have to flood the world with our stories. You know, we have to talk about return on investment on volunteers and how do we measure that, but our greatest resource, our greatest ROI, return on investment, is the stories of Peace Corps volunteers. And so if you don't have the fact that you were a Peace Corps volunteer and your staff bio at work, put it in there. When I was interviewing people, the most common response to my question, how did you hear about Peace Corps, was a teacher. My parents served. I had a friend that served. You know, my uncle or aunt served. And so people were coming to us not because of our recruitment efforts or, you know, commercials or radio spots. They were coming to us because of one-on-one connections that they'd had with people who'd shared these very beautiful and very intimate stories. And so our stories are really our greatest resource, and we need to be sharing those at all opportunities that we have. And that's so that we can both inspire people into service, and then when they return, they know what to look for RPCV groups to land there and help them find jobs and help them make this transition so we can start to minimize that trauma.
Well, I would take a little bit of a different perspective, I think. What I do today is I teach leadership, and I learned it in the Peace Corps. And I think reframing the Peace Corps experience as something, futurists say there are 2 trends, 2 shifts that we're going through. One is to become a global community, which we do by being in the Peace Corps. The second one is to create the inclusive, diverse, and equitable society. In other words, we're moving towards a multicultural society and world. The young millennials and the generation after them are already there. And I think we reframed the Peace Corps as something that taught us leadership, that made us global citizens, that made us inclusive and able to relate and embrace people of all cultures and ethnic groups and ages and generations, etc. In the 90s, I worked with the National Peace Corps Association to do a leadership program for Peace Corps volunteers that were re-entering. But I've been listening some, and I think one of the things that's so important is for us to empower ourselves to understand, because when I came back from the Peace Corps, I went to get my first job, and I had this portfolio because I had been doing microenterprise work with women way back then, and I had all this stuff, and I go to get interviewed, and the guy stops me and he says, I'm really sorry, but we only hire people that have a master's degree in social work. This was the state of Wisconsin. Well, this was absolutely bizarre to me. I'm the first person in my family to become educated, the first one to graduate from college. My mother had a 5th grade education. I thought this was ridiculous. And I had just come back from the third world where I thought I had made a contribution. So I slammed my papers on the floor and I said, you don't understand. I was born to be a social worker. I was born to do this. And he looks at me and he says, if you can go down to the University of Wisconsin, we'll help you get a master's degree if you'll come back and work for us. Now, I understand I had certain privilege there for the first time in my life because I am Latina and I was able to speak Spanish, etc. But I had that sense of empowerment that I got through the Peace Corps. And I invite everyone just to stop for a minute and to realize that, yes, it's difficult to come back, particularly under these circumstances. But I think the most important thing we can do as Peace Corps volunteers is to have that banner that says, guess what? I'm a global citizen. I've made contributions across this globe. I'm inclusive. I love culture. I'm here to build this new world that's coming. Because especially today with our problems in foreign policy, with our problems with the current administration, the work we need to do in the future is absolutely more critical. And the other thing I'd like to say is that I've been at this for over 50 years. So it's not, I'm coming back from the Peace Corps and what I'm gonna do. It's our lifelong commitment to building peace in the world. I thought I should stop, so go ahead.
No, Miriam and I always have this thing of like, do you go first or do I go first? That is definitely something that we have a little bit of trouble on. But kind of going back to the reentry process and saying what Rock was saying in regards to how traumatic it is to do so. Because of the evacuation, afterwards, I ended up spending almost 3 months homeless back in the US, even with the support of Peace Corps finances. And this is in due because of the evacuation, not having a place to go, but also because of the pandemic. And realizing that whenever I would call the organization and say, I need help, this is what's going on, they said, well, after the 2 weeks of quarantine, you're on your own. It is not up to us to decide what happens to you. So in regards to the reentry process, understanding that there needs to be a support system for volunteers who may not have family, who may not have a familiar support system, and in an evacuation where you might only have 24 hours to get to the capital or 24 to 72 hours to get out of the country and you're now back in the US, there needs to be something for us. Miriam, I'll flip it over to you.
Yeah, and I think that what we've all realized, even when we created the report, Facebook and social media was definitely huge for us in terms of bridging those connections. So I think that in the future, looking at ways that we can formalize those places where we can get information. I know a lot of RPCVs were offering help, therapy sessions, all types of help. And if you're not on Facebook, you wouldn't know, or if you're not in these specific chats, you wouldn't know. And so figuring out how can we get all of these information, all of these groups to volunteers that need it, I think is definitely something that will be important when considering reentry for the future as well.
And just to finish this question, as I can speak on myself, but I can also speak in regards to some people that I personally know who were also evacuated with me or from different countries. The community support page that was found on Facebook was a plethora of support and knowledge from the community, and that provided us a better opportunity than Peace Corps ever did.
Thank you all. It's really great how a community comes together like that organically and helps each other. And I think that's what we saw emerge during the evacuation is when the group started forming and kind of talking amongst themselves and then also speaking with us and helping share with us, you know, what their needs and expectations were from the community and from the NPCA and from Peace Corps. So thank you. Shifting a little bit to recruitment now, the question here is, how were you recruited? What does the future recruitment process need to look like? We've heard some ideas earlier today, but from your perspectives, what would it look like? There is a question, and I'll just throw in right at the same time, that's really mostly for Juana. How can Peace Corps focus its efforts to recruit members who may be experiencing the crab syndrome, please? So thank you. I think we'll kick it over to Rock first, if you don't mind, and then go from there.
I think that it goes back to the question that was brought up earlier on one of the report outs. Where is the peace in Peace Corps, right? And for me, peace is not a place of like harmony and no conflict. It is absolutely a place of conflict, difficult questions, expanding our comfort zones, learning about other people and our world that we exist in. Those are all peaceful things. What breaks the peace is when we have a disagreement that leads to some sort of violence, right? And so I think that Peace Corps having healthy conversations about how they're going to recruit in the future will keep them from becoming the question I was asked a lot as a recruiter, like, what is the Peace Corps, right? So my thing is like, let's not be the Peace Corps, because that's, that's not good. And we're definitely the Peace Corps, right? And I remember as a recruiter, 10 years ago when we first started our big initiative with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to recruit on historically Black colleges and universities and start increasing our diversity numbers. Like, I was sitting around in a conference room with a bunch of other recruiters. Most of us were white, and there was one Black recruiter. And we were talking about strategies of how do we recruit Black people, or how do we recruit persons of color as Latino community members? How do we recruit these? How do we talk to these people? And then we were talking, oh, we need to get this Black recruiter to come with us on campus to talk to the Divine Nine or to talk to the different, university groups. And he looks at us and he says, guys, like, I recruit on white universities, right? Like, you don't need to be a certain race or color to go recruit these people. But it was such an enlightening moment for me, and such a moment where I realized, like, even in the Peace Corps, even working as a recruiter, like, my privilege was, and my blinders were so on. And here is this guy who just like, I was like, he was laughing at us, like, this is so ridiculous. And that was 10 years ago when we first started doing this. So I think recruitment has a long way to go, and it's full of these difficult conversations and lots of apologies.
Thank you, Rec. How about Asura? What do you think?
Sorry, I lost the unmute button for a second. So even the younger generation sometimes has problems. In regards to recruitment, I went through a very interesting process. I did not do the traditional 2 years. I was a response volunteer, but I was in Russia during my recruitment process. So I had to do all of the paperwork, fingerprinting, background checks in Moscow. So that was a very interesting, fun way to do it. But one thing that I heard after I had been evacuated was on the phone call, kind of reiterating what happens when you're evacuated and you don't have a place to go, was the logic that someone told me over the phone, saying that if we had known you were homeless, we never would have taken you on. We would have never hired you. We would have never had you come in. And keep in mind also, for a response position, I was an English teacher at a school for the deaf and Ukrainian Sign Language documentation. They had this position up for 3 years. So the question I would field back to them is like, well, do you want to wait another 3 years for someone who has traditional housing? So in regards to recruitment, we also need to be looking toward diversifying those who have been through the former foster care system and those who do not have a traditional family path, because they can bring a wealth of knowledge that is not traditionally found in typical volunteers.
If I can ask, how did you hear about the Peace Corps?
I did that all on my own. It was just one of those things where I didn't want to come back to the US just yet. I had been fine living for the past year and a half or so in Russia, and I knew I didn't want to return to the US, and I found, just through a random Google search, Peace Corps. And the response position came. They were looking for someone who was fluent in American Sign Language and Russian, who could do well with only 2 weeks of training in the capital and have a very smooth transition.
Thanks, Asura. Yours is a really interesting perspective, one I think we don't hear much, and I know your return back home was very distinct in that, so thanks for helping us become more aware of how we can support returning volunteers in situations like yours. So Miriam, you're a child of a Peace Corps volunteer yourself. Can you share a little bit on the perspective?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like Peace Corps has always been something that I've always considered as something that I would do, because my father served in Peace Corps in Ethiopia and in Eritrea. And so I'm one of the few that kind of has that connection, I think. And the fact that we don't have, like, there were lower numbers of volunteers that are people of color, that are Black, Latino, they don't have that kind of connection as like other white volunteers might have. So it's really important to also see how that could affect recruitment. The other question too that I have in terms of recruitment, I think, is looking overall at the mission of Peace Corps. When Peace Corps was first created, it was an exciting thing. It was something that was radical, really. And as we go forward and the population in the US, the new generation kind of comes about, and they're dual national, they're all types of different backgrounds. They have also different expectations on what they want to do and what they want to be a part of. And they're questioning neocolonialism. They're having a lot of questions about Peace Corps overall. And so, like, how will Peace Corps and NPCA shift? I know even questions about, joining NPCA, a lot of volunteers that I know that are Black or Asian or people of color don't feel like NPCA or Peace Corps is for them. And so how do we kind of expand that discussion and make them also feel like they're a part of this as well, Even for me, without the works with WCAPS, I'm not sure if I would have been as involved with NPCA. And so I feel like that is a concern that I have, at least for recruitment and getting people involved with NPCA and Peace Corps.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I really appreciate that, because I do believe that it's incumbent upon us to help create a more inclusive and welcoming community here on the part of NPCA for the Peace Corps, greater Peace Corps community. Juana, did you have anything to add about the question specifically for you related to Crab syndrome?
Yeah, but I also wanted to go back to some of the discussion I was listening to talk about coalition building and partnerships, particularly with communities of color. Because I think the association itself, for example, the Hispanic Association for Colleges and Universities that serves Hispanic serving organizations, or the NAACP, or some of the other organizations in our communities that serve people of color. Because it's through those organizations, not only can you learn and exchange and grow your power base and your numbers, but it also gives you an entree into young, well, they don't have to be young, but into people of color that want to serve in this way. The other thing I would like to say about it is that servant leadership and leadership as service and as social change are absolutely pivotal in communities of color. So when I joined the Peace Corps, I actually joined the year that John F. Kennedy was killed. And so there was this tremendous upheaval in our communities about what we could do to support this vision that he had about young people going and learning about the world and contributing. And I think today we have similar kinds of reasons for us to be able to go global and to try to help and work with communities. Of course, we all know we learn as more than we give. I think the Crab syndrome, from people that don't know what it is, it's when you grow up marginalized, when you grow up in a society that does not validate your people, your history, your background, who you are, your incredible contributions to this country, you develop what's called the psychology of oppression. In other words, you begin to internalize the negative messages that society has put forth. And that's why identity building and learning our history, and we have Black History Month and Hispanic Heritage Month and all of that, because you have to integrate that into the American fabric if we're truly going to have a multicultural society. And I think where it comes in with the Peace Corps, well, first of all, I want to say that if you have that sense of, and all I wanted to do when I graduated from college was to give back, because I'd been given so much. I'm an immigrant. I came here, I became educated. And so I had that sense of service, which I think is pivotal in communities of color. That's how we've gotten where we are, is to collaborate, to help one another, and to serve. But I lost my train of thought. Oh, wait till you get here, everyone. So this whole idea of service, I'm saying, is a key thing for communities of color. And so me growing up, I didn't know I was smart. You know, how could I know I was smart if I didn't know the language when I entered school, if I didn't, understand the system? And I do now, by the way. But so then you begin to think everybody in your community is not smart, because I didn't have professors, you don't have teachers, you don't have, Congress people, all of this stuff. So that's the Crab syndrome. Can I do it? Am I good enough? Are my people not capable of doing it? So identity building becomes real important. But what I was going to say was that there are so many issues in communities of color that we're kind of caught in the crossfire. So the Peace Corps, in order to be able to really attract leaders in communities of color, for example, DACA students, which would be another political thing, but they're brilliant young people that are dealing with so many issues. And when they come out of school, they are so talented. But then they got to deal with immigration in this country. They got to deal with homelessness. They have to deal with the low income wages. They have to deal with the cost of college education for our kids. So somehow the Peace Corps has to be relevant to the many dynamic, critical issues that we face and connect. Because what I learned in Chile, I was able to bring back and help start a women's center for Latino women that had a business center that followed the micro enterprise principles I learned in the Peace Corps. So it's that weaving together of the needs and challenges in communities of color. It's building those partnerships. It's making the Peace Corps relevant and an experience that you can bring back to enrich your own community. And at the same time, for Anglos that come back from the Peace Corps, you need to join organizations and become multicultural yourself so that we can start building those bridges across communities and fulfill the goal of our third goal.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Juana. And we've touched a lot here already on diversity and inclusion, but let's drill down on that a little bit more for each of you. How will diversity and inclusion impact the Peace Corps in the future? And in that, what will a future generation need? How can you answer that? Zura, would you kick us off, please?
Sure, I would love to. And if everyone here knew ASL, then I would use sign language. But moving forward, one thing that I noticed within the School for the Deaf was that all of the teachers were hearing. And when you're teaching deaf children, deaf and hard of hearing children, you need to have access to deaf teachers for education, for the native sign language. And in regards to diversity and inclusion for Peace Corps moving forward, if you want, or if Peace Corps, whatever host country wants to work at schools for the deaf, you need to have deaf volunteers. You need to have hard of hearing volunteers. You need to have volunteers whose first language is sign language, not a hearing person, not someone who speaks, who took a class for 2, maybe 3 years. We have many, many people like that. But to represent specifically for the deaf and hard of hearing populations, that's who you're going to need moving forward. So my only thing is that if your host country says, hey, we have a school for the deaf, okay, great, we have volunteers. We need to go interview deaf and hard of hearing volunteers, not hearing people, because that is their world. That is their language, their culture, and you need to support that. So it's great that I'm a hearing person. I can teach you ASL. I can teach you English. I can learn Ukrainian and Russian sign language, no problem. But I'm not deaf, so I can't give that cultural understanding. And, you know, moving forward, also kind of when we're talking about like ending or eradicating, we can't eradicate it, but colonialism in Africa, a lot of sign languages are based on American Sign Language, not the native sign language that is in the country. So you need to understand that when you post job titles, my job title was English and American Sign Language teacher. We don't need that. We need support, for example, in my case, Ukrainian Sign Language. And that's why I shifted my job to not teaching ASL, to representing and respecting the native sign language. So those are the two things. You need to hire, and yes, it's hard because of the language barrier, but that should not stop you. And that, if you can't do that, then that's your area for improvement.
Well, thank you so much, Asura. That's amazing. We're learning so much from you and from the more recent volunteers who have served. That's a very interesting perspective. Miriam, did you want to share on this as well?
Yeah, briefly, I just wanted to say, you know, we're looking at stats for Peace Corps. You see diversity kind of going, like at least the rates of volunteers that are serving from different backgrounds are going up and up. However, there isn't really any support in place for for a lot of them. And we're also seeing that ET rates for those volunteers of color are significantly higher than like their white counterparts. And so these are the questions that we need to be looking at this and saying, like, why is this the case? Like, it's not just about recruitment, it's about how do we also retain these volunteers? How do we keep them interested? How do we get them involved with NPCA? And how do we do all of that? And right now there's great work that volunteers are doing. I know that there's letters that volunteers have written to their country offices on racism and discrimination that are going around in the community. Volunteers of color are creating group chats. They have WhatsApp chats, they have Facebook groups, they have all of these resources, but they're not compiled in one place. And so it's really hard for volunteers to kind of have access to all of these things. And it's really important for us as well. And so I'm thinking about like creating seminars, creating like spaces for these volunteers to kind of meet each other, to meet other people who are older, other RPCVs who are working in the field in different types of fields so that they can get also motivated and feel like Peace Corps and NPCA are for them. And so pushing for that, I think, and holding NPCA and Peace Corps accountable for that, I think is something that we all have to do and be responsible for. Which is why it's also so important for volunteers to get organized and actually really advocate and push these institutions, I think.
Yeah, great point, Miriam. Thank you so much, because that's what we are, a community-driven organization, and all that we do and should respond to the community and the expectations that you set for us. So thank you for that. Rock, you got something to add here?
No, I want to save time for the other questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next question, penultimate question. I think we're getting close to our time, so we'll be quick in wrapping it up here. But what are the potential barriers you see to joining the Peace Corps or NPCA, and how can that impact future volunteers? So, Rock, do you want us to start it off with that one?
I mean, I think there's a lot of barriers. For me personally, coming in, you know, at 40 years old, for me to clear medical cost $6,000. And at the point I quit my job to join Peace Corps. And so I was unemployed and pretty much homeless. I was one of those backpacking through a different country, but I had no home of record in the United States. So getting back to the States and like having to rely on other services because I had no medical insurance, it was a $6,000, thing that we just put on our credit cards and then paid it off with our readjustment allowance. So that's a major barrier. Like, I mean, I know I'm older, I've had some medical issues, but the cost involved with the medical application alone is prohibitive, I think. So that's my point.
Thank you, Rock. I think that's something that we don't think much about is the cost involved for many individuals, particularly if we're not young and as healthy as we were before. Thank you for bringing that perspective to this. Who else would, let me ask just for one other person maybe to chime in on that question, and then we'll move to the last question.
Well, all I need to say is if I had to pay $6,000 for medical, I wouldn't have been in the Peace Corps. I had no money, and now students are graduating with debt. So again, going back to leadership in communities of color, we need to dedicate ourselves to public change, public policy change. This cannot be that people have to pay. When I found out that happened, because 2 of my Latino friends joined, I was shocked that it took that long, because the process wasn't like that in the past. And I think some of these barriers are just ways to not expand the Peace Corps to where it should be at this time in this multicultural age.
Thank you, Juana. Financial barriers, I think, are one of the most significant things that we need to look at how we can help remove, so that anybody and everybody who wants to serve can, regardless of their economic situation. So Miriam or Azura, do you have something to add there? Otherwise, I'm going to jump into the next question real quick.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is if we can try to support the process for when we're overseas. I had to buy multiple flights and trains from St. Petersburg to Moscow. The consulate had closed literally maybe 6 months before I got into Russia. And the amount of money that I spent wasn't close to Rock, but it was almost half of what Rock had to spend. And that wasn't for medical. That was for, well, part of it was medical, but also part of it was legal and the flights and everything like that. So I think whether it's doing away or trying to have some sort of community generated support system for those who do not have the financial means to join Peace Corps. And just because you can't pay for physical or can't pay to mail FBI background clearance, just because you can't do that, that should not mean that you are unable to join the Peace Corps. So socioeconomic status should not be a determinant.
Thank you, Asura. And I'm going to go to the next question. And Miriam, if you had something to add there, you could just throw it in on the answer to the next one. But finally, wrapping us up here, the question that we want to ask all of you is, what do you envision the future of Peace Corps volunteer values to be? Miriam, would you like to take that first? Are you ready?
Yeah, I think that, like, if you look at the next generation, you see even the Black Lives Matter movement, you saw, at least when I went, you saw a huge amount of the next generation there present, and they're calling for change, they're calling for accountability, and all of these things. And it's like, if Peace Corps and NPCA and these organizations don't shift, they won't exist. And so it's like, if we really, really do care about Peace Corps, we want Peace Corps to exist and to continue, and we care about the mission, we also have to be open to changing Peace Corps and making these radical changes, or else it will not exist, because the next generation won't accept it. Even when I was joining Peace Corps, you know, I had a lot of questions from my friends, you know, why are you joining this organization? Like, you know, there's not a lot of people of color there. It's mostly white people. Like, there was a lot of just preconceived ideas of what my Peace Corps experience would be. And there was a lot of fear of joining it, and being a part of like a neo-colonialist, you know. And so if Peace Corps really does want to exist, I think that it does need to shift from the foundation in terms of like its mission statement and what it does and how it does it, is my opinion.
Thanks, Miriam. That's a really powerful statement, and I take that to heart because I think you're absolutely right. If we don't shift, we will not exist. And that's food for thought, very important for us. Rock, or Azura, do you have something whichever one of you would like to join in here?
Yeah, I've got something real quick, and then I'll be fast as well. Okay, so Peace Corps, like the first groups were Kennedy's kids, right? Shriver's kids. And if Kennedy was building Camelot, then Peace Corps is his Excalibur. It was the best thing that was created, and it was on the edge of social justice and change. Now we know, like, it's sort of steeped in neo-colonialism, white savior complex, those sort of things. But, you know, like, most of the people didn't have those terminology back then. But if Peace Corps wants to remain this, you know, this cutting edge social justice thing, it cannot remain reactive as it has been. It can't just wait for and prepare for the worst case scenario and be quiet. And during our evacuation, that's all that the EPCBs have experienced, is quietness. Our main source of like our cutting edge Excalibur has been Facebook. I mean, okay, so like we need the agency. We want to support you. This thing has hurt us. Like we gave our lives to this organization and our hearts are in it. And we believe in like social justice and change. So I just want to see Peace Corps return to its roots of being this cutting edge of social justice and change. And I think embracing that would lead to a revolutionary new wave of applicants whose hearts are full, who are young and active and ready to serve and really, really get to the core of the agency, which is world peace and friendship.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and finish it off. But my logic on it is there needs to be a reflection of the community back home. So who do you see race, religion, socioeconomical status, disability, or otherwise? That is who needs to be the volunteers. So out of any cohort, regardless of what country you're in, you need to have a multitude of everything and everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. And Juana, I'm going to ask you if you have any last words of wisdom for us.
What I wanted to say is that we are the association. We are the Peace Corps. You know, I served on the board for 6 years. I developed the leadership program for the association. We want to continue engaging. It's not somebody doing it for us. It's each one of us making that long-term commitment. I want to say for everybody who's been out in the demonstrations, who's been out there trying to make this change, keep it up. Because as an elder, I did that in the 60s. You know, I did that for women, for the Vietnam War, for civil rights. And then there weren't that many people marching. And I think my last thing is we have to do this. It's a lifelong commitment. It's up to each one of us. The Peace Corps has prepared us to be leaders in this new global and international and multicultural age. So I would like to see us say, yes, each one of us is going to step up our commitment. Yes, each one of us decides we're going to do this. We're going to reach out to other communities. We're going to join organizations that aren't white if we're white. We're going to join different organizations from different perspectives. And we're going to keep this going. And I think it does take an advocacy kind of commitment for all of us to do our part in creating the future.
Thank you so much, Juana. That's a great way to end this conversation. And I'm sorry we have to because we want to keep moving on. But I want to thank especially the evacuated Peace Corps volunteers, Miriam, Azura, and Rock for being a part of, well, not being a part, for organizing this panel and inviting Juana and myself to be a part of it as well. I've really enjoyed getting to know all of you over the last several weeks and working with you and a number of other evacuated Peace Corps volunteers. And this has just really been a highlight for me. And though I pain with the way that your service was interrupted and you had to come home, I'm just really amazed at how you have rallied around as a community and supported each other and helped drive the conversations that we're having today. So thank you all so much. So I'm going to transition us over here to our next guest. We have a very special guest who is joining us today. And I'm going to ask a colleague of mine who is with us today to introduce our guest. This is Jelena Porter will be joining us here in a moment to introduce someone. And Jelena has been asked to do so because she is a graduate of Howard University and because she's a returned Peace Corps volunteer, two of the most important credentials I think she brings to this role. So thank you so much for being with us today, Jelena, to make this special introduction.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you everyone else who's on the call. Good evening, and I want to say thank you for everyone who's on the call who is a return volunteer. I want to thank you for your service, whether you were an evacuee or did full term or did multiple terms. Thank you for joining the Peace Corps Connect to the Future Summit, not only today, but for other town halls if you were on them later in the past couple of weeks. As Glenn said, my name is Jelena Porter, and I'm a returned volunteer who served in the Kingdom of Cambodia from 2009 to 2011. So it's without question that I would have not been a Peace Corps volunteer had it not been for my time spent at Howard University, which is why I'm joining you here today. Howard has always been at the forefront of leadership, justice, truth, and service. In fact, many Bison are well known for stirring up a bit of good trouble dating back to its inception in 1867. NPCA has boldly answered another call to service, which calls for a much more united, diverse, and inclusive Peace Corps community. Some of you may know that Howard has long been recognized as a top volunteer producing school, which is a direct reflection of its leadership. It is my honor to introduce all of you on this call to a leader among leaders, the current president of my beloved Howard University, Dr. Wayne A. Frederick. A native of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Frederick was the 17th president of Howard University and inducted in 2014. He also previously served as provost, chief academic officer, associate dean of the College of Medicine, division chief in the Department of Surgery, director of the Cancer Center, and deputy provost for health services. Without further ado, please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Wayne Frederick.
Hi, good afternoon and good evening to all of you. Thank you, Director Porter, for that very gracious introduction. Always good to see a fellow Bison. To the National Peace Corps Association President and CEO, Glenn Blumhouse, to NPCA Board Chair, Mary Carmen Smith-Martinez, and to the dedicated members of the National Peace Corps, thank you for this invitation to bring greetings during the occasion of your summit. The times we are living in have been challenging and unpredictable. But I hope that you would all be encouraged within the Peace Corps community to hold on for brighter days that are certainly ahead of us. When this pandemic is finally over or tapers off, the world will be in more need of the resources provided by service-minded individuals like you than ever before. Please continue the conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was happy to join just in time to hear that last panel, and that was very invigorating. While working together to fight systemic racism and advance social justice and peace around our world, we must all recognize that it starts with each of us and the efforts that we each must put forward every day. Howard University is proud to have a long-standing relationship with the National Peace Corps. When Howard students and alumni travel to other countries as Peace Corps volunteers, they represent Howard University's long history of leadership in cultivating understanding through education and service. They return with a greater understanding of the world around them, which helps them to excel in their careers and fields of study. I'm very pleased that for the 8th year in a row, Howard University holds the #1 spot on the list of top Peace Corps volunteer producing historically Black colleges and universities. And this is certainly something that we're extremely proud of. During 2018, Howard sent an impressive 20 alumni to serve in the Peace Corps, certainly a zenith force and one that we intend to break in pretty short order. Last year, Howard graduate Jeremy Butler served as an agriculture volunteer in Tanzania. And he said of his experience, "My time at Howard University took me on an unforgettable journey where I experienced many successes and a few pitfalls, but everything was worth it in the end. I believe that my service in the Peace Corps will mirror that of my Howard University experience. In the Peace Corps, I have had many successes and a few obstacles to overcome, but I'm more than confident that just like with Howard University, my Peace Corps journey will be worth it." And I want to remind all of you that we must be obsessed about the journey and not just the destinations, because no single destination will fulfill us or will cure every ill in the world. And so we must continue that long journey to justice. Mr. Butler and the Peace Corps embody the motto of truth and service that Howard hopes to instill in all our students. You come to Howard not to get a degree, but to be educated, but you leave to serve your community, and that's when your education comes alive. So likewise, the Peace Corps is a precious gift to all the nations of the world, and the work you do will be essential, and it continues to be essential even during this time period as well. So as you prepare for the organization's 60th anniversary next year, please remember that the excitement that you felt when you first dedicated yourself to volunteerism at home and abroad. Remember the grateful, smiling faces that you helped bring to someone's day. Remember the relief that your presence brought to a family in need or a student in need of a mentor. We will get through this pandemic and resume our mission work again together. And so we are continuing to work with the National Peace Corps Association to bring your national summit to Howard University next year. And I certainly am looking forward to hosting you. Thank you very much and good evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frederick, and really appreciate your words and your invitation to join us next year on campus for Peace Corps Connect. We're working on that right now, so hope to make it happen. I'm going to pass the baton over here real quick to Maria Carmen Smith-Martinez, the Chair of the Board of Directors of National Peace Corps Association, to close this out. Thank you, Maria Carmen.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Dr. Frederick, for your support. We look forward to continued engagement with you and with Howard University. Fellow RPCVs and friends, on behalf of the National Peace Corps Association Board of Directors and as a returned Peace Corps volunteer from Costa Rica from 2006 to 2008, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to engage with you today. Thank you for your passion for service, for your dedication and time, for your bold ideas to build a better future for the Peace Corps. As volunteers, we lived and worked in communities across the globe to promote world peace and friendship. We answered the call to serve because we imagined a better world. And we're here today because we believe in a better future. As a community, we recognize that Peace Corps has its flaws. And within NPCA, we likewise acknowledge our own shortcomings. In embracing the need for change, we take time to reflect upon our history, across our community, within ourselves. We are here because for the first time since 1961, there are no Peace Corps volunteers in the field. The global evacuation triggered by COVID-19 resulted in an unprecedented disruption of service for thousands of our PCVs, and many are eager to redeploy but face an uncertain environment. We are here because racism is a systemic issue and our community is not immune. The struggle for racial justice is embedded in the history of the Peace Corps, present in the early days of our founders, and demonstrated in the volunteer experience today. We are here because we recognize these challenges and we champion your ideas to reimagine the future of the Peace Corps. With the social impact approach, NPCA works not only for our community, we are driven by you and the priorities you bring to focus. So that leaves us with a big question. Where do we go from here? To convey that I'm inspired by the ideas of this summit and the 8 town halls preceding it does not do justice to the hope I feel and the optimism I hold for our future. We have heard about ways to create a more inclusive community, one that recognizes racial justice is a critical component to ensuring diversity. We have heard about revamping Peace Corps policies, about establishing an exchange program with the countries we serve, about evaluating our PCV support, and about measuring our collective global impact. We have heard the ideas of our future. The NPCA staff is small but mighty, and I express my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude for our dedicated, courageous team that raised the bar these past few weeks, working tirelessly to create a space to listen, to learn, and to forge a path to the future. Yet, we cannot go alone. Working together with you, with Peace Corps, and with our PCVs across the nation and around the globe, we must now convert these ideas into actions, develop the strategies and the programs that will enable us to fulfill our vision of a united and vibrant Peace Corps community. So we do not ask you to stay tuned for more information. We invite you to sing the song with us. And we offer several instruments to enable your support. First and foremost, engage with us. If you have not already, join NPCA to learn more about the next steps that will develop from these big ideas. Second, donate. We could not undertake any of the work we do without your generous support. Your financial leadership allows us to develop new initiatives like the Global Reentry Program we heard about today. Your contributions allow us to continue critical engagement for advocacy efforts, expand our support for the affiliate group network, and further the unfinished business of our PCVs in communities around the world. Contribute to the community fund projects, become a mission partner, or join our Shriver Leadership Circle. Your support in any amount will help fund the ideas discussed today and ensure they become part of our reality. Next, connect with the affiliate group network. As past president of Atlanta area RPCVs, I understand firsthand the challenges affiliate groups face with community outreach. More than 180 affiliate groups are eager to reach you, from regional and country of service groups to workplace affinity groups that support RPCV recruitment and professional growth in the workplace, to the increasing number of cause-driven groups, championing issues like environmental action, social health justice, and refugee support that are joining this network. Search the affiliate group directory on the NPCA website. And if you don't find what you're looking for, contact us to learn about starting a new group. And finally, amplify our voice. We number over 230,000 RPCVs and Peace Corps staff, yet many in our community remain on the fringes. As we work to create a more inclusive environment, we need your help to reach our fellow volunteers and shape a space that welcomes everyone. We know that we can go further together, and we must unite as we never have before to realize our full potential. On behalf of the entire NPCA team, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your commitment and your dedication. I'll take one note in an immediate call to action. As Glenn noted earlier, we will have a survey to collect your feedback on the summit and the actions we will undertake in the days to come. Please take a moment to share your thoughts with us and inform our continued improvement. We are honored to walk with you on this journey as we connect Peace Corps to the future. Thank you.